All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Governance and Priorities Committee meeting for the City of Nanaimo for Monday, April the 24th, 2023, and respectfully acknowledge that we are holding this meeting on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk today is Ms. Sheila Gurry. Today's Governance and Priorities Committee meeting will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. Question period sign-up sheet is on the table by the double doors to my left for agenda items only. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. Members have been granted the authority to join our meeting electronically, and I note Councillor Manley is with us so far electronically. Welcome. And I think that brings us to the agenda. And the first item on the agenda is introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. Good afternoon, Committee. For late items today, we have agenda item 6A, Robin Webb from BC Hydro. The presentation regarding BC Hydro and electrification has been removed. They were unable to make it, so they will be added to a future agenda. And of note, Chair, I'm not sure if now's a good time to note it, but as it's a late item, we have received some recommended additional information motions, amended action motions, and additional action motions that could be added to today's presentation on the City Plan Integrated Action Plans. So during the meeting today, when those amended action motions do come up, we will help Council facilitate or the committee facilitate that discussion. And at the end of that, if there is still a need for additional information motions or future reports from staff, possibly we could add to additional GPC meeting in the future. And that is the next item as well, Chair, on the agenda. So when we get to that, I can speak to that as well.
Thank you, Ms. Gurry. And I do note we have a fairly full agenda today. And if there is anything that we do not get to, we can look at adding that to a future meeting. So a motion for the adoption of the agenda as amended. Mayor Krogh, seconded Councillor Perino. Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. And I also note Councillor Brown is joining us electronically. Motion for adoption of minutes as circulated. These are minutes from the Governance and Priority Committee meeting held on March 27th of 2023. Mayor Krogh moving to receive. Councillor Hemmons seconding. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. And we come to agenda planning. Governance and Priorities Committee agenda planning. Again, Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Chair. So on page 12 of your original agenda package is the GP schedule of upcoming meetings. And for now, up until we meet on Wednesday to discuss the GPC committee in its entirety and the new terms of reference and actions moving forward, as well as any other committees, that's Wednesday's discussion. For now, we have an upcoming schedule of the meetings. And there are some proposed changes to this document coming on Wednesday. Should today, after you're done going through the integrated action plans for the city plan, you wish to have reports back, it would be a good idea at the end of that discussion to make any motions, and we could add them to a future GPC with reports back to that meeting. And then that motion today would be under consent at the next council meeting, and we would proceed at a future GPC with those reports for information should they be needed. And that's it, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Gurry. Any questions of Ms. Gurry on this? Seeing none, thank you very much. And we will move, seeing as we do not have our BC Hydro presentation, we'll move to reports, community wellness and livability, the draft integrated action plan and draft priority actions for an empowered, a green, and a connected Nanaimo. Mr. Lindsay, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Council. It's a pleasure to be here. As you mentioned, we're here with our second of what we currently have scheduled as 4 meetings around your integrated action plan. So I'm going to turn it over right now to Ms. Bhopal Singh, but one of the things I know, and she's going to reiterate it, but I think I want to just make it clear for Council, we've got quite a bit of information on your agenda today, quite a bit of discussion around action plan. If Council feels there's extra time and more time needed, we're happy to carry this over to future meetings. So we want to go at a pace that's good for you. There is no deadline. We've right now are trying to wrap this up in the next couple, the end of May, ideally, get a final recommendation from this committee. But if that has to extend a little bit so that we're at a point where council is comfortable with the action plan, we'd rather see that happen. But I'll turn it over to Ms. Bopalsing.
Ms. Bopalsing,
Good afternoon, Council.
it's always a pleasure to see you
Thank you.
and to hear you.
Well,
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Hopefully you won't be hearing too much of me. To my right, you see a panel of our GMs, and this is a reminder for all those present, watching, is the draft integrated action plan follows on as the implementation step from the city plan that was adopted in July. And any one of the GMs here could be giving or leading this conversation and will be coming in at different points. So what we're doing today is you had a test run with us on March 27th to go through a healthy Nanaimo and look at the different priorities you want to bring forward to achieve in the next 0 to 4 years of your term to implement city plan. And so carrying on from that, the next items that you'll be looking at today is an empowered Nanaimo and some suggested priorities around that, followed by a green Nanaimo and connected Nanaimo. And as Mr. Lindsay said, that's a pretty tall order. You've got a lot to get through. So we do have a GPC scheduled for this Wednesday, the 26th, that we can follow through anything that we don't get through today. And if we move very fast, we can move on to the next items on the integrated action list. One thing I wanted to make note of is on the 26th, you're also aware that we have a council's first annual session with neighborhood associations, and we anticipate coming out of that a report that we may come back to you with some recommendations to add into the action plan at a subsequent GPC. So just to make it clear that we are aware that we anticipate some confirmation of some actions by the neighborhoods and perhaps some new ones that you want to consider adding in. So with that, I would like to turn over to Ms. Began, who's going to lead you through the Zoom polls. And actually, before I turn over again, is to also say we've received some additional ideas and motions from you, and that's exactly what we're hoping for, is although we presented you with a short list of different actions, this is your chance to tell us if you concur, if you want them changed, if you want to add, and we hope this will be an interactive session, so you're not tied to what we put up on the screen before you. So without further ado.
So if I may, Ms. Bopalsing, before you proceed, do councillors need to have their devices ready to do a polling?
Yes, they do.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Ms. Bopalsing, I was just going to interject that, yes, we just need to take one moment to make sure you're all set up and ready to go, and then we will get started.
Okay, and perhaps while we're waiting for that, again, it's just to remind you that you've got the whole suite of expertise of the different actions on this panel here. And
Should we just take a minute or two then to just make sure everybody is connected?
sure,
Thank you.
thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, we have to each vote, don't we? I was going to say you could share mine, but
Do we have a spare one we can bring? Do you need any assistance? We could use some of yours. Ours are at the office. We didn't bring ours today. Ours is at the office. Our spare one. Okay. Can you use mine if you'd like?
In a Zoom meeting, though, if you're connected to audio, it'll still play just quietly. So if you have to disconnect, it's It should do automatically. I'm just gonna make sure.
Okay, so there. You are connected.
Are you okay, Your Worship? Okay.
I believe we're ready to go.
All right, thank you very much. Everybody is connected, hooked up. We're ready to proceed.
Linked up. Lovely. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Nice to see everyone again today. All right. So as Ms. Ballplessing mentioned, we're going to be going through the empowered, the green, and the connected sections of the priority list of the IAP. So that's attachment B. And it's really important that you have attachment B in front of you because many of the actions in the empowered section, the actions were so long that I was unable to include all of the text that details the full extent of that action. So you'll notice that in the Zoom polls that come up, you'll say see attachment B for details. So it's just important that you understand the full details of a specific project or a program prior to voting on it. Exactly, yeah. All right, so as a reminder, what will pop up on your screen will be per topic area. So for example, we'll start with truth and reconciliation and include both ongoing as well as immediate actions. So that will be documented in the Zoom poll. It will also be symbolized by either a money symbol, which means that that action is currently within our financial plan, or a star, which means that there was a previous council who voted on that motion, on that specific action. So other than that, we'll just, go through them, see how everyone's doing. We did really good last time. If we're lucky, we'll get through all of it this time. If we don't, we have Wednesday. And I just wanted to remind, just like Ms. Ballplessing mentioned, that we are meeting with the neighborhood associations on Wednesday. And so the intent of that session will be to identify what are their priorities in the hopes that some of the priorities may make it into this priority list. And if they don't, then they'll be in the library. But that will be something for you to consider because currently right now under the neighborhood section, there are only 2 priorities that represent engagement with the neighborhood associations. We've left out any additional actions for the neighborhoods to come to us with what their priorities are. So that's the purpose of the session on Wednesday, and staff will be coming back with a summary of what we heard and then determining how to move forward with what you heard as it relates to the integrated action plan. All right, without any further ado, are you ready to go?
Ready.
Excellent. So once again, there's programs and there's projects. The difference between them is a project has a specific location, so you'll notice that it'll be a title, for example, 100 Comox Road or Departure Bay Recreational Area. So those are the difference between the two. One applies to the whole city, which is a program, and the other one is specific to a location. But they're all, if you have any questions, you can ask as we go along. So if you run the first poll, please, under Empowered. And Natalie, if you can just change to the next slide, please. That would be great. Oh, on to the next one, please. There we go. Okay, so we will give the committee time to read through all of the actions that are included under Truth and Reconciliation. And then once all of the votes are in, I will then read the results. And as a reminder, we're going to be going with the majority. So your options are to keep an action, to remove an action, or if it requires further discussion with the committee. So I will leave the floor to you.
I'm not sure who's controlling, can somebody let me into the Zoom call?
You don't have to write an essay. It's just multiple choice.
Okay.
The screen's back.
Thank you, everybody. It looks like we have all 8 in, so we're going to discuss the results. I'm not going to read every action because we'll never get through all of them, but I'll just read the summary of what was found. So for priority number 105,
We're just getting a little echo still.
test, test, test. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So for priority number 105, all 8 voted in favor of keeping the priority. 106, all voted in favor of keeping this as a priority. 107, 7 out of 8 committee members voted to keep the priority, so it will remain. 108, 7 decided to keep the priority, and 1 requiring further discussion, so that priority will remain. Priority number 109, we had 4 in favor of keeping the priorities. That one will remain. Oh, no, apologies. That's a split. We had 1 remove and 3 needs further discussion. So we'll open up the floor to the committee to have a further discussion on 109, and I'll just read out that action. Under Truth and Reconciliation, as an immediate action over the next 4 years, explore partnering opportunities in areas related to skills development and training with Snuneymuxw First Nations.
I'm sorry, are we looking for discussion or
Please.
rationale on this one, which is number 5, number 109?
That's correct.
I'll start off then, because I believe I voted needs further discussion simply because I didn't know what this would entail and what responsibility the city would have in this area.
Okay, through the chair to the committee, the intention of this one was looking at areas where we could work with members of Nanaimo First Nation to learn about what opportunities there are to build skills related to employment opportunities at the city. You might be aware through Public Works a few years ago, there was different mentoring and shadowing opportunities in certain roles, and looking at what other opportunities we have to support the nation as they wish in looking at some of their members being ready to or interested in some of the skills. There's also the opportunity as they're building their own teams that there is cross-training opportunities where we could train our staff and theirs together for their purposes administratively as well as ours. So that was the intent of that particular topic.
And if I may, before I look for other speakers, which I have a couple, to me, we would also be very much bound by legislation in terms of fair hiring practices and so on.
Through the chair, absolutely. The intention here isn't about preferential hiring or anything like that, but more about providing opportunities, whether it could be that they have a similar department than ours, say finance. Do we have the opportunities to share knowledge, information that builds the skills of their teams and ours, as well as opportunities? It could be opportunities for Nanaimo youth to learn life-saving skills or lifeguarding skills, a range of different things that would allow us to not look at preferential hiring or anything that's contrary to our union, but would give opportunities to learn about different city functions and ways, the educational and other training requirements that could potentially support members of the nation being eligible for hiring.
I have Councillor Hemmings. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. You asked a similar question to mine, and that was just to understand this a bit better. Given what Ms. Bhopal Singh has shared, I'm fully behind it. I'm curious, though, do we need it in policy if it's already happening with Public Works? Like, is this something that wouldn't happen if we didn't choose to put this in city plan?
Through the chair, that was a past piece that was being done. I guess this would give us the ability to look throughout the organization at a range of options and ensure that council's aware that this is something that we're doing and that you support that initiative.
I think if I may, that answer satisfies me, and I'll switch to keeping this a priority, but it was the breadth and the scope of this that worried me a little bit because explore partnering opportunities related to skill development. That could be a whole work stream for the Prosperity Corporation. Like it's so big and it's so great. And I just wanted to understand how we're doing it. So that satisfies me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other councillors with questions or comment? I guess if I may ask one other thing, it would be this. Would these initiatives be initiated by the nation? I would assume that they would come to us if they wanted some type of program in this regard.
Through the chair, I think it could be two ways. It could be that we see opportunities where, particularly where we have a skills shortage, that we could invite the nation, as we do others, to learn, come to job fairs, things like that, and then look at opportunities where there is the ability for us to support training of the general public as well as members of the nation, so that could be done that way. The nation can also be asked if there is something that you feel that we might be able to jointly run a training program on so it benefits your staff and our staff. That's also feasible.
Thank you. I'm seeing no other speakers. The pictures on the electronic Zoom members are very small, so please jump in if I don't see your hand. Did we need to do a revote? Is that our process? Ms. Gurry is nodding her head. I'll just indicate that I think I still need further discussion on this, so will maintain my stance, but I will call for all those in favor of keeping this as a priority. Councillors Eastmuir, Geselbrock, Hemmons, Mayor Krogh, Councillor Perino, Councillor Manley, I see, and I believe that's all. Those in favor of removing, I see none, and needs further discussion, myself and Councillor Brown. I believe that is everybody who is in attendance. Thank you.
Thank you. So that action will remain within the priority list. Moving on to action number, where are we? 110. So we had 5 committee members vote in favor of keeping it priority, 1 to remove, and 2 needing further discussion, so that action will remain. Moving on to action number 111, we had 4 in favor of keeping it, 1 in favor of removing it, and 3 requiring further discussion. So due to the split vote, we'll have the committee discuss this one further. And the action is an immediate action that reads, work with Snuneymuxw First Nation, the provincial government, and the regional district of Nanaimo to enable Snuneymuxw First Nation members living on reserve to participate in city elections.
Thank you. Number 7 and number 111. Councillor Hemmons? No, that's a holdover. Councillor Perino. Sorry. There we go.
My question is, so again, it's one of those that it's a bit vague. What does that mean? Does that mean that they can vote? Does it mean they can participate as a person running in the election? What does that mean?
Through the chair to Councillor Perino, this one predates your time at council, and so it is actually a policy in city plan, and it was a request from the nation that was included in city plan. And at this point in time, it doesn't commit the city to anything other than approaching the provincial government to explore what opportunities there are.
Okay.
To give a bit of historical context, it comes in part from particularly Snuneymuxw's what's known as IR number 1, which is surrounded by the city, where members of the nation are not able to participate in our municipal elections. The way our boundaries and their boundaries work, participate in voting for electoral area A, Cedar, in the RDN. And so for many of them, they feel there's a desire, because they see the city as having more influence on their community, that they'd like to have an opportunity to participate. So this is one that sits with the provincial government and for us to have a conversation with the province and Snuneymuxw about, but it doesn't actually commit the city to any particular.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I see Councillor Brown. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. This one I think needs a little bit more discussion because there is work underway already on. So in the DRIPA action plan, there was one item for municipal affairs, and that was around inclusive governance. And there is action that has been pushed for and has been received by the province for 3 pilot projects with respect to inclusive governance. It's a very, very big topic, just in relation to how it fits into existing legislation, where legislation is inadequate for accounting for inclusive governance, and the sheer amount of nations across the province. So I think it would be probably premature for the city to actively get involved in this when there's actually already local conversation happening in this regard to what that might look like. And so I just worry that would be making a priority something that we haven't really participated in to date, and it has much bigger ramifications for the province than just the relationship between Snuneymuxw and City of Nanaimo. And so when I look at the sort of the 0 to 4 years immediate action, I think it makes sense for maybe us to continue to have this conversation where it's raised with Snuneymuxw or other First Nations that the city occupies the traditional territory of, but maybe just take a back seat for a bit and let some of the processes already underway play out and learn from them and activate and be present in those conversations when we request. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see other speakers. I'll just quickly comment that I did not vote to keep it as a priority, I think for the reasons that Councillor Brown was explaining, that this is really more in the hands of the province, and it doesn't relate only to our area. And I think we'll be in the hands of provincial guidance there. Anybody else on this one? So, did we need to vote? Again, I get the nods, so we are again on number 7 or 111. Those in favor of keeping it as a priority, please, hands up. Councillor Perino, Mayor Krog, Councillor Manley. If I miss anybody, please let me know. Removing it as not a priority, Councillor Eastmuir, Geselbrocht, Hemmons, Thorpe, and Brown. And I don't know if we're missing any votes, but needs further discussion. Anybody left? I think that's covered it. Thank you. On to number 8 or 112.
Right, on to number 112. We had, apologies.
Sorry.
So just a question on process. When we have the second vote, is needs more discussion still an option, or are we just voting yea or nay for keeping it in?
Well, I'll let Sheila speak to that.
Through the chair, I think it's up to you guys.
Okay.
This is your process, so.
We did have the last committee meeting, one action that required further discussion, so that will remain as a priority until the final vote.
Okay.
That will happen in May or June.
Okay, great. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to, oh, apologies. Anything else, Lisa? Can I go? Okay. Okay, moving on, number 112. We had 6 committee members in favor of keeping the priority, 1 for removing, and 1 for needing further discussion, so that one will remain.
Could I just interject there, if I may? I voted remove it as a priority for the reason that, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding was that we have been holding this property waiting for Snuneymuxw to make a request to have it transferred. And that's where it sits, and we're simply waiting on their direction. Am I correct or incorrect there?
Through the chair, you are correct. There was an area that's been set aside many years ago, partly from the Port Authority and partly from the city to be transferred. So this would just have it in the action items to complete that transfer process. The land is never officially transferred over, but it sits there in basically a holding status at this point.
All right, thank you. I guess I just don't see how it can be a priority if we're simply waiting for their request to transfer it, but that's fine.
If I can add a little bit to it, it's one of those, it's also to advise the public, because the public are utilizing it right now as parkland, and I think we also put it in there to make sure people are aware that at some point in time that it's going to transfer to the nation. And right now, when we did the improvement to McPhail Sutton Park a number of years ago, we included that land with a letter from the nation that we would improve it until such a time as they wanted to come and utilize it. So that's why we kind of keep advising through the city plan and other plans that it is the nation's property. We're just holding it.
All right, thank you. On to number 9 or 113.
Right, we had all committee favors vote in favor of keeping that as a priority. And the same goes for action number 114. And that is wrapping up Truth and Reconciliation, unless the committee has any additional actions they'd like to bring forward relating to this topic. Seeing none, we will move on to equity and inclusivity. So we'll run the poll. This is a bit shorter. There's 1 ongoing action and 3 immediate actions for your consideration, one of them being within the financial plan. Okay, thank you, everybody. We have all the results in. So for action number 115, when it comes to equity inclusivity, we had 6 committee members vote in favor, 1 to remove, and 1 for further discussion. So that action will remain. Action number 116, all in favor of keeping that action. 117, all in favor of keeping the action. And action number 118, we had 3 in favor of removing it and 5 requesting further discussions. So that one relates to an immediate action that reads, allocate staff resources to the creation of a recreation coordinator position to focus on equity and inclusivity for city programs and facilities.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Chair. I actually had a comment or a question regarding 115. Revise the internal style guide. Is that, it says ongoing, and I just want to confirm that keeping that a priority means that is in every print going forward. We're going to be looking at that. We're not looking to pull everything we currently have off the shelves, restyle it, and put it back out. Is that accurate?
Hi, Chair. Through you to Councillor Hemmons, I can respond to that. That's correct. So we are currently have been working on a style guide. We might need to get some additional resources focused on that in order to accomplish it, but it will be going forward, making our applications, our forms, all of our information accessible and inclusive.
Thank you. And if I may, I'll just add on to 118. I voted for their discussion as needed simply because this isn't typically how I would expect to see a new position come to council. I would like to see it come with a business case and with the context of what we're trying to do with it, and et cetera, et cetera. So not that I'm against it, I just don't, I don't see this as an appropriate place to embed that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hemmons. And that's exactly along the lines of the comment I was about to make. And I see Mayor Krogh, followed by Councillor Geselbrecht.
I'll be brief. It's a very heavy agenda, Chair. Ditto with Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. Councillor Geselbrecht.
Thanks, Chair. I agree with Councillor Hemmons and prefer to sort of set what we want to achieve policy-wise and then have staff reports come to council, you know, at budget time around the needed capacity to achieve those goals within the timelines we are expecting. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments.
If we, through the chair, if we could have the committee vote on that, please, through a motion to, I just confirm that you're either going to keep or remove the action or require further discussion.
I did not see any votes for keeping it, but I'm happy to have a vote again if you wish.
Please.
All right, councillors, we're on number 118, action. Those in favor of keeping it as a priority. I strain my eyes to look at the screen and I see no hands. Those who wish to remove it. Councillor Eastmuir, Geselbrecht, Hemmons, Mayor Krogh, Councillor Perino, and Councillor Manley. And I think I will vote that way as well for the reason that I mentioned. And then further discussion still needed. Don't know that I saw Councillor Brown's hand. Did I miss you, Councillor Brown?
Chair, I was in favor of removing it.
Removing, thank you. So I believe that is unanimous now.
Correct, thank you. So that action will be removed from the priority list. Okay, we'll move on to access for all. And there are quite a few in this section, one with council motions and one within the financial plan. So we will leave it to the committee to vote on these actions. Okay, all the votes have now come in. So for action number 119, we have all committee members in favor of keeping the action. For action number 120, we have 7 in favor of keeping it, 1 requiring further discussion, so that action will remain. Moving on to action number 121, we had 7 in favor of keeping the priority and 1 requiring further discussion, so that action will remain. Action number 112, we had 5 in favor of keeping as a priority, 2 in favor of removing it, and 1 requesting further discussion, so that action will remain. Action number 123, we had 6 in favor of keeping the action and 2 requesting further discussion, so that action will remain. And action number 124, 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting to remove it, and 1 requesting further discussion, that action will remain. Number 125, 6 in favor of keeping it as a priority and 2 requesting further discussion, so that action will remain. And action number 126, 5 in favor of keeping it, 3 requesting further discussion, so that action will remain. And then we have action number 127, all in favor of keeping it, and the same goes for action 128, all in favor of keeping it. Thank you, everybody.
I see Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Chair. And just a question through you to staff. So I put in a lot of needs further discussion, mostly because of the cost implications. So what I was struggling with was how do I give agreement when I have no idea what the cost is and what the implication is to the taxpayer? So set me on the straight here.
Through the Chair to Councillor Perino, before I turn over to Mr. Harding and others, I just want to remind Council that where you see a star is a council motion that you're in some ways re-endorsing.
Yes.
Where you see a dollar sign, that's where budget has already been assigned.
Has already been assigned?
Yes.
Okay, that's
right.
helpful.
So
Thank
sorry, I forgot to remind you of
Okay.
that. And also a reminder to you all that please feel free to add anything new as things may occur to you. And if there is wording of one of the priorities that doesn't quite jibe, and you'd like to suggest an alternative, please feel free to either ask us to come up with something or, suggest your own changes. So, Mr. Harding, I don't know if you'd like to answer Councillor Perino?
Yeah, Chair, through to Councillor Perino, the ones that are with the funding associated with them right now would still come through our budgeting process. So if, for example, we wanted to do 126, we would identify that in the budgeting process that council would vote on if we came forward with a project. It would most likely be in partnership with a group or organization for that adaptive bike trail with potentially some granting dollars, but it would still come to council as a budgeting request or option.
So through the chair, again, if I could just ask a final question. So when we are agreeing to keep this as a priority, what we're saying then is for you to explore it, not necessarily that we will agree to it in the end. Is that right?
Chair to the Council President, that's correct.
Okay.
So we still would need to come through the 5-year budgeting process.
Okay, good.
And council can allocate then the priority when you want to do it or how you want to achieve it.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Councillor Brown has his hand.
Yes, I was just going to go to him. Thank you. Councillor Brown, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Perino sort of raised a good point, and I will admit I'm slightly uncomfortable with this process just a little bit because I think we're being asked to weigh on in very specific things, and I'm not always sure that's our role when I think of sort of the governance and policy level of our decisions, and then there's like very specific items like a staff position or park benches, which to me is sort of dipping down way too deeply. So I just thought the way I've approached this is basically looked at city goals and said overall, or city plan goals overall, is the package going to move us well towards those goals or not? That's how I'm kind of viewing it. So some of them I just actually don't know how to answer because I just actually don't feel like I should commenting on them. So and I think Councillor Hammond's comments from the previous one was like, and Councillor Gesselbrock very spot on around, well, I don't really want to vote on a budget position here because every year we have a sort of a 5-year action plan that gets implemented, and hopefully we've set the goalposts and staff set the resources and budget. So just highlighting that because I don't always know how I'm going to answer on something because just don't know if I should be voting on it. Thank you.
No, thank you. I think those are fair comments, and I also agree with Councillor Perino's observation regarding budget issues, which I think we have to be cognizant of. I would just, seeing no other speakers, add a couple of my thoughts. Number 122, if we could just back up to that, I was hesitant on that one simply because of jurisdiction. When we talk about transit routes and frequency and so on, as we all know, transit is the regional district's bailiwick. So I'm not sure to what extent it's a priority for or should be a city priority. Certainly to work with the regional district. And the other one in a similar vein was 126, I believe, the Steve Smith Bike Park, improving accessibility, which sounds like a great idea, but to what extent is that a decision made by the bike club, which might come and approach the city for help and improving their accessibility? But is it our facility to take that initiative? Mr. Harding says yes. All right, thank you. That's the further discussion I needed.
So, Chair, I wonder if I just add a little bit perspective, as I mentioned a few times, is this is a city plan and it's definitely an OCP, but just to remind council that it's also the integrated Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan. And so if we had kept a separate PRC master plan, you would see a lot of these specific type of objectives. And so that's why it's a little, you'll see, and that's why we kept them to the integrated action plan. But if we had a PRC master plan, you'd see a number of, let's build this over here, this over here. So that's why you're seeing that integration of that. As you will see with Mr. Sims' active transportation, you'll see some specifics that you wouldn't normally see in an OCP, but because we've integrated them all together, you're going to see some very specific types of parks, recreation, culture, engineering objectives in there. And yes, the Stevie Smith Bike Park is a city facility and managed by the city, and so is the pump track, and so is the skills park. The BMX track is by the association, but
right.
The others are three of ours.
Right, thank you. Councillor Geselbrecht.
Oh, thanks. Just a commentary on like specificity of actions. I think, given this is the first crack at integrating plans, we're not going to get everything on the mark of the level of detail that we're going to need, but it's the first crack at it. And subsequent iterations will have it more refined. Thank you.
Ms. Bhopal Singh.
Through the chair, I'd actually like to build on what Councillor Geselbrecht is saying. This is a bit of an experiment, just like City Plan was for us in integration. And the idea is that once we've done the heavy lifting of this part, you get to look at it each year, better aligned with your budget cycle. This time, we're kind of doing things a little bit in sync, but also trying to get this first cut. And so you can take things on and off. And the reality is there's a lot of potential priorities for you. And we're trying to figure out what you want to see done in 0 to 4 years. And things may shift. And every year you may say, you know what, we'd like to make progress over here. Let's put a back burner on some of these things. Maybe get a new grant that furthers one action. But just get a sense of what you want us to be working on. And there's going to be debate amongst you as the level of detail and direction you give staff, but this also provides a roadmap for the community as to how you want to see City Plan implemented over the next 4 years. So I hope that helps a bit. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we're ready to move on.
So I just want to confirm there's no additional actions for Access for All that a committee member would like to bring forward. We can move on to culture. Seeing none, okay. So we're going to move on to culture. And there's quite a few projects under this list, so we'll open up to the committee to vote on these actions. And I'm not seeing any ones that were council motions or within the financial plan. Okay, all the votes are in. Thank you, everybody. So when it comes to the topic of culture, for action number 129, we had 5 in favor of keeping it as a priority, 1 for removing it, and 2 requiring further discussion, so that action will remain. For action 130, we had all in favor of keeping it as a priority. Action number 131, 7 in favor of keeping as a priority and 1 for removing it, so that one will remain. Action number 132, we had 5 in favor of keeping as a priority and 3 requesting further discussion, so that action will remain. Action number 133, all in favor. Action number 134, 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 or 2 requesting to remove it, so that action will remain. Then we have action number 135, 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting to remove it, and 1 requesting further discussion, so that action also remains. And then we go to the last one, which is 136, 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting to remove it, and 1 requesting further discussion, so that action will remain. And just as a note, for action number 134, which relates to the Stadium District, it's to Swayalana Park, we're just going to slightly change the wording to say upgrade the Lions Pavilion to improve the acoustics and audience views, unless there's any opposition. Just to have better wording instead of repeating the word twice.
Thank you. I wanted to comment on that one, but I'll go to Councillor Geselbrock first.
Oh, thanks. Just on number 1, prepare a strategy that raises awareness of the role culture plays through culture grants and supporting the production delivery of arts and culture. I voted to keep it, but I'm kind of on the fence. Like, I don't really know much about what this strategy is and whether it's needed or not. And I just noticed that there was a few people that looked to remove it or discussion, and I was just curious to hear those folks' opinions and maybe from staff, because I could change my vote on that one.
So we're looking back at Action 129, which was the first one we voted on. Any other councillors with a comment or rationale on that one? I see Councillor Eastmuir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask staff exactly what that would look like, and yeah, more detail. Thank you.
Chair, through to Council Eastmuir and Councilor Geselbrock, it's really, council puts a lot of funds into the cultural grants every year. It's also by per capita, so it's one where we think we need to always come back and just remind the community and remind the cultural groups, or work with the cultural groups of what that program is benefit. So it's part of, we came, I think it was a year and a half ago, to the previous council to kind of look at the cultural grants and where they're coming from and how we administer them. And one of the steps in there was also to show the benefit of the grants, or how they're utilized throughout the city. So that would be the cultural manager working on that. Strategy may be not the best word, but I think it's really showing how the benefit of that program is, and is it delivering what the community wants and what the cultural community wants, and are we administering it in the way that the broader cultural community thinks is the way to administer it. So there's a number of things around that per capita funding for cultural, particularly the cultural operating grants.
Thanks, Mr. Harding. And I don't see other hands. I'll mention that I voted to keep that as a priority simply because I personally feel there is great value in our cultural award program, as we do with other award or grant streams rather. And that was my reasoning, as simple as it might seem. Councillor Geselbrock, did you wish a re-vote on this one? Councillor Eastmuir?
Through the chair, I'm wondering if I could ask you and also Mr. Harding, would it help with clarification if it was prepare a communication strategy? Does that?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
If we added the word communication in front of the word strategy, would that be clearer? Okay.
I'm hearing yeses around the table.
Okay, perfect. And please know that there was a couple that previously where some of you had questions that I wish I had suggested that we could reword. So do feel free to interject and ask us if the wording just isn't clearly telling you what the action is, and we can tweak it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I wish to comment on number 135, action regarding the Lions Pavilion. Mr. Harding, I'm assuming this would tie into the Maffeo Sutton master plan and would be done in conjunction with the Lions Club, or what's left of the Lions Club?
Yes, Chair, absolutely. It would be working with the Lions, and then also, and that's another one, working with the cultural groups, particularly, as council knows, we have over 180 events, non-pandemic year, down at Maffeo, and we know we need to upgrade in the area of our acoustics and how that facility works. We'd like to keep that facility and add to it versus building something new. We think there's lots of opportunities to enhance it. So that's what that goal would be, is to enhance that facility to support all the events that do go on in that park.
Yeah, thank you. And I recognize that the acoustics, unfortunately, are not good at that venue, but it is a popular location. And I certainly meant no disrespect to the Lions Club, who have contributed so much to our community over the years. But like all service clubs, their numbers, unfortunately, are dwindling, and that's the reality. So I certainly hope that we would work in conjunction with their membership. Thank you. Anybody else?
Okay.
Seeing nothing?
Thank you, Chair. All right, unless I see anybody else who'd like to add an action to the culture section, we'll move on to archaeology and heritage. Going once, going twice. No. Okay, so we'll move on to archaeology and heritage, and we have only immediate actions, 2 of which are currently allocated funding in the financial plan. All right, thank you, everybody. So the results are in for archaeology and heritage. So for action number 137, we had 6 in favor of keeping it, 2 requesting further discussion. So that action will remain. Action number 138, 7 in favor of keeping it, 1 requiring further discussion. That action will remain. Action number 139, 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting to remove it, and 1 requesting further discussion. So the action will remain within the priority list. Action number 140, 6 in favor of keeping it, 2 requesting further discussion. And then we have action number 141. We are all in favor of keeping it as an action. Is there any request to change any wording or any additional actions that we'd like to add to this section before we move on?
Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Chair. Again, it's more of a question through you to staff on number 137, question number 1. So we put money towards this already. That's my understanding, correct? Okay. So complete an archaeology, I can't even say the word, overview assessment in partnership. What does an overview assessment, what is that exactly?
Okay. Through the chair to Councillor Perino, an archaeological overview assessment is something that it's a methodology that's typically used by the province to do a broad assessment of areas of both known and also high archaeological potential.
Okay.
So back in 2018, the city did a draft one, and through a variety of different challenges, both with ourselves and the nation, there's been a need to look at it again, and we've gotten some funding to sit down with the nation to go through those areas of high potential. And it's one of those things with archaeology where you discover different things as time passes. So we use a layer that the province gives us.
Okay.
And in order for it to be updated, so developers give us information and information comes forward. And so over time, that needs refreshing and updating. So the overview is a methodology that is done with a registered archaeologist
Okay,
that's
good.
working on this. And so it's part of a collaborative process to make sure that we're aligned with the nation's understanding. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
I'll just quickly comment, if I may, pardon me, number 139 and 141. I was in favor of both of those. I sometimes feel that the contributions of the Japanese and Chinese community to the growth of and history of Nanaimo get a little bit, not overlooked, but somewhat shortchanged, and I'm pleased to see these remain priorities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So we're going to move on to public art projects and programs. And just moving forward, the remaining topics really are heavily focused on parks, recreation, culture, and wellness. And so many of these actions, as a reminder, were pulled out of existing plans, 10 plus plans, of actions that have yet to be implemented. And some of these documents are quite new, some of them are quite a lot older. So there's a reminder specifically for the public art section, all the immediate projects or all the immediate actions or specific projects that come from those plans. So open it to the committee for voting. Thank you, everybody. So for public art projects and programs, for action number 142, we had 8 in favor of keeping as a priority. For action number 143, we had 7 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting further discussion. Action number 144, all in favor of keeping it. Action number 145, 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting to remove it, and 1 requesting further discussion, so that action will remain. Action number 146, we had a split, 4 in favor of keeping it and 4 requesting to remove it. So we'll ask the committee to have a further discussion and to vote on that action again, please, through a motion.
Thank you. Excuse me, Council. Action number 146. I voted to, sorry, Councillor Perino, I voted to remove it simply because I didn't understand, maybe I should have put further discussion. I didn't understand at all how a public art feature would feature, no pun intended, into the Gateway project. So perhaps staff can clarify that for me, and then I'll go to Councillor.
Actually, that was my question as well, Your Worship, Miriam.
That's okay.
My question, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, that one is for the roundabout at the corner of Boxwood and the new section that's coming in from Bowen Road. There's quite a large roundabout at that location. And so we're just in the process of developing concepts and working with Snuneymuxw on a potential public art piece for the center of that roundabout.
And thank you for that clarification. I don't think I will be changing my vote because I'm not, I would need to be convinced that having an eye-catching piece of art in the middle of a roundabout might be a little distracting to drivers trying to navigate a new roundabout. So I'm not comfortable with that off the top of my head. Councillor Perino, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I think first of all that the wording needs to be changed from the Midtown Gateway. I think as soon as you said the roundabout at Boxwood and Bowen, it made sense, right? As soon as you did that. There is some discussion that sometimes when you put artwork in the middle of a roundabout, you can cause an accident waiting to happen, so to speak, because people are so busy looking at it that they're not concentrating on the drive. And I've certainly heard that from past experience, not my personal experience, but from past city work. But I think I'm going to actually change my vote from remove to put back in to keep. But I just think the wording needs to be changed because as soon as Mr. Sim said it, it was clear. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Manley, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think like as the gateway into Nanaimo, it's a nice place to have a piece of art. I'm not sure that having it in the roundabout is the best place for it, but I think that some kind of feature as people drive off the parkway and into town is a good idea.
Thank you. And I see Councillor Brown. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I vote to remove it, and I still think that if you're going to invest money in public art, with limited resources, I'd rather be putting it, seeing more art in certain areas where people occupy, especially when they're not driving by. So I think there's a lot better places that we could be putting a lot of this art, and not every single piece of infrastructure needs to have an art tagged onto it. Lots of cities get built without art everywhere. So I think a little more thoughtful application of it would go a long way. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. Yeah, super in favor of public art, but I did vote to remove this one just because I just don't see it as a priority. If we have other places we can put it, I'd prefer public art to be in a place where there can be a plaque that the public can interact with it and be able to really appreciate and know what they're looking at. So that my priority would be to, plant some trees or, beautify the roundabout in that way and reserve our public art for other places.
Thank you. And Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff, could I understand where this fits in the project budget? And I'm going to bounce around and say the same thing for the Harewood turf fields. And I'm sure you can imagine there, we're talking about a project that is double the budget that we originally thought. By removing public art, are we saving ourselves anything? And in places like a roundabout? I'm with Councillor Eastmere, art all over the place, but I'd like to understand how it's specifically project funded and what our risk is if we pull it out, or et cetera.
Chair, to Councillor Hemmons, so for the four PRC ones that come after that, they're not part of the budget, so we'd be working within our public art funds that we have, how to integrate it. For the turf fields, we were hoping to work with the sport groups and particularly the high school and some potential art projects that could go working with particularly the high school students on some art projects that we're working on right now with the covered space. So it would be those types of ideas, but to really show that we want to make sure we do integrate art into these projects as the overall message and goal. That's what we've heard as the overall goals and objectives and policies in city plan, is that when we do these larger capital projects, we do add some public art.
Thank you. And for the non-PRC projects?
So it's a similar thing to what Mr. Harding's talking about, is that we're investing a lot of money in hard infrastructure, and in the Boxwood roundabout, as an example, it would be akin to a landscaping feature, like a hard landscaped feature, as opposed to, well, there might be an artistic component to it, but I don't know what the budget is set aside, but there was a policy many years ago about sort of striving for 1% of the project's cost to go towards an art feature. And so that's kind of the order of magnitude.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else. I really will just comment again that I don't see a roundabout as an appropriate place for public art, and Councillor Eastmuir's observation that public art should be in a place where people can get up close to it and observe it and so on. We don't want people running across the roundabout road to get to view the artwork, so I'm really still leery of this. We had 4 votes that went around 146, 4 votes to keep, 4 votes to remove, so obviously we'll need another vote.
If I may, through the chair, staff have come up with new wording to help clarify the action before you vote on it, if that's okay?
Let's hear the new wording and then we'll vote.
Okay, so it's still called the Midtown Gateway Public Art, but it says integrate a public art feature into the roundabout at Boxwood and Bowen Road. I can't read my own writing, which in brackets is the Midtown Gateway Project. Thank you.
All right.
Oh, as part of the Midtown Gateway Project, apologies.
Thank you, and we are specifying the roundabout.
Correct.
All right, if council is comfortable with that new wording, then we will have a re-vote on number 146. Those in favor of keeping it as a priority. Councillor Hemmons, Councillor Perino, Mayor Krogh, not seeing any others. Those in favor of removing, Councillor Eastmuir, Councillor Geselbrock, Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Manley, and Councillor Brown. Thank you. And I don't think there are any votes missing. Anybody for further discussion? No, we've captured everybody. Thank you.
We did. Thank you. So the action will be removed. Okay, moving on to action number 147. We had 5 in favor of keeping it, 3 for removing it, so that action will remain. Action number 148, all in favor of keeping it. Action number 149, we had 4 in favor of keeping it, 3 for removing it, and 1 requesting further discussion. So we will ask the committee to discuss that one further and vote on it as well.
149, public art feature at the Harewood Turf Fields.
That is correct. Yeah, Harewood Turf Fields, integrate a public art feature into the Harewood Turf Fields.
Councillor Eastmuir, you're first.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciated Councillor Hemmons' question about the potential budget implications of that. I voted to keep it because I think it will be a really high traffic area and a lot of people visiting that area, so it would be a great piece to feature some public art. And I think we could get really creative about the ways that the things that we consider public art. And I love that Nanaimo is really moving in that direction with imprints in the sidewalk. It doesn't always have to be a sculpture, as much as there's many amazing places for sculptures. So I think this could be a really cool opportunity, but I do have the budget implication concerns as well, but I think it would be a place to go for it.
All right, thank you. Councillor Perino.
Chair, the disappointment that I have with this discussion is that we sometimes, and I do it too, as soon as you start thinking public art projects and programs, you start to think about budget. And the fact of it is that there may not be a cost. We don't know that for sure. There's lots of opportunities, particularly at the Harewood Turf Fields, where you may involve students. You may involve certain types of artistic graffiti, which can be incredibly talented and beautiful. And there are ways to do this, lots of cities do. And I just think we get caught up in the budget. And it disappoints me to see that people want to remove it. And I think the justification for removing it is a budget. But I think we need to leave our minds open to the opportunities that may come. We can always say no later. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on this one? I believe I voted to remove simply because I couldn't picture what the art feature might entail, how it would relate to the turf fields, the sporting activity that would happen there. So if I was given a specific proposal, I might support it, but I just couldn't picture it. So do we need another vote or more clarification on this, council?
Please.
So we'll re-vote. So this is 149, and the first option is keep it as a priority. Those in favor, please. Councillor Eastmuir, Hemmens, Perino, Mayor Krog, and Councillor Manley. And those for removing, Councillor Geselbrock, Thorpe, and Brown. I believe that's 5 against 3.
That's correct. So action 149 will remain.
Thank you.
And then lastly, we have action number 150. So we had 6 in favor of keeping it and 2 requesting to remove it. So that action will also remain. Are there any additional actions relating to this topic that the committee would like to bring forward for discussion?
Councillor Geselbrock.
No, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on, we go down to community events, festivals, tournaments, and gatherings. And so we have 2 actions in ongoing, 2 in immediate, and in ongoing, we have 1 relating to the financial plan.
Not seeing the poll come up on my screen. Anybody else? No? It's not just me.
Are we having trouble with the...
So council, while we're waiting for IT to catch up with us, just checking in, seeing how you're doing with the process on your second go around since March 27th, and any comments or things we can do with the remainder of this session to support your decisions.
Thanks, Ms. Bhopal Singh. And with those words, I see the poll up, so I think we're ready to go.
Did everybody get a chance to complete it? I'm and submit yet, or are we still waiting for?
Council, is anybody still completing?
Chair, I haven't had a poll appear yet.
I'm sorry, Councillor Brown, you haven't had a poll up on your screen?
I have not, no.
All right, the rest of us have, so that's a challenge.
Is there any pop-up box that you're missing, Councillor Brown? No? So perhaps when we go through, would you be comfortable, Councillor Brown, if we asked what your vote was for each of the, okay, and then.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Okay, for action number 151, we had 7 in favor of keeping it. And Councillor Brown?
I see
All
thumbs
right,
up.
we have 8 in favor of keeping that one, so that action remains. Action number 152, we also had 7 in favor. Councillor Brown is voting in favor as well, so we have 8 in favor of keeping that action. Moving on to action number 153, we had 6 in favor and 1 requesting further discussion. Councillor Brown in favor of keeping it, so we had 7 in favor of keeping it. And then we have action number 154, we had 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting further discussion. And Councillor Brown is requesting to keep it. So we had 7 in favor of keeping that one.
And if I may, I was the vote for further discussion, and I'm confessing ignorance here because although I am part of the tourism board, I have not carefully examined the sport tourism strategy. But it seems to me, from what I know, and Councillor Perino can correct me, the discussions we've had at that table have focused largely and highlighted larger events such as the BC Games or BC Senior Games or provincial track and field championships, large-scale events. So I hesitated on this when I see things related to smaller-scale happenings. Is there any comment?
Yes,
Harding can make.
Chair. Your first part, Chair. Just did you say you hadn't seen the sports tourism strategy, or?
I have not studied it carefully. I have it.
You have it. So you're right. There'd be both, if we could say that both, is that definitely need to go for the bigger events as illustrated. But the sports tourism strategy also identifies some niche markets that we could capitalize on, and those are some of those ones that identified there that we could. We have a comparative advantage on some of those sports, and that's where the strategy says we should focus on some of those, particularly on the cycling, the Indigenous sports, and some of the paddling. Are some areas that we could capitalize on our location and our climate, as well as where others may not be doing or focusing on these specific activities.
So perhaps, excuse me, perhaps I misread the wording here when it said focusing on, but that does not mean precluding.
That's correct. Yeah.
Larger events as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, looking ahead at the rest of the action items, it might be a good place right now to have a break because we're a little bit more than halfway through, but there's some heavier items coming up. So I'm not sure if you wanted to have your break a little bit earlier or try to carry on through.
We have 2 more sections that are empowered, which is parkland and park amenity management, and then waterfront use and protection, and that section will be done. And then we'll move on to the green section.
I'm hearing one voice that says finish empowered. I'm fine with that. Anybody else? I'm sensing consensus to
move on.
Complete this section.
Lovely.
Thanks, Ms. Gurry. Appreciate the thought, but.
Okay, we're going to move on to parkland and park amenity management topic. And so this is the section where, because of Zoom and maximum characters that we can use, much of the text did not make it in. This is where I'd like you to reference your attachment B for the full details. And many of these details come from the Parks, Recreation, Culture Master Plans, many of them that I mentioned, quite detailed so that you're aware of exactly what that action would entail. So it's not just a general statement. So we will open up the polls for this topic area to the committee. Apologies to interrupt while you're thinking, but it would be on page 114, or sorry, page 14 of attachment B that would have most of the details that you're looking for, and page 15.
Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering if Councillor Brown is going to have to do the same thing this time, or did he get the poll done? Or are we waiting for somebody else?
I filled it out, Ms. Geary.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, so we'll go through the parkland and park amenity section. So for action number 155, we had all in favor of keeping it. Moving on to the immediate actions, number 156, 5 in favor of keeping it, 2 in favor of removing it, and 1 requesting further discussion, so that action will remain. Action number 157, 7 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting further discussion, so that action will remain. Action number 158, 7 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting further discussion. Action number 159, all in favor of keeping it. Action 160, 6 in favor of keeping it, 2 requesting to remove it, so that action will remain. Moving on to action number 161, all in favor of keeping it. Action 162, 5 in favor of keeping it, 2 requesting to remove it, and 1 requesting further discussion, so that action retains as a priority. And action number 163, 8 in favor of keeping it. And then lastly, action number 164, 7 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting further discussion. Are there any additional actions that the committee would like to bring forward or have any questions regarding any of the actions before we move on to the next topic?
Seeing none at this point.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to waterfront use and protection. So we have 1 ongoing action and quite a few immediate actions for the committee to consider. And we will now launch the poll.
Chair or Ms. Geary, if there is a poll, I do not see it.
I'm sorry, Councillor Brown, could you repeat that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. If there is a poll, it is not appearing open again.
All right, again, the other councillors here have it, so we'll see what we can do.
So perhaps because it hasn't launched, we could relaunch it? And apologies, because no one's voted. Oh, someone just voted. But perhaps we could relaunch it?
I just finished it.
All right, it's up on our screens. Councillor Brown, do you have it this time? Good. All right, here we go again. Deja vu.
All right, the results are now in for waterfront use and protection. For Action 165, all in favor of keeping it. Action 166, 7 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting to remove it. Action number 167, 7 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting to remove it. Action 168, 7 in favor of keeping it, 1 to remove. Action 169, all in favor of keeping it. Action 170, 7 in favor of keeping it, 1 to remove. And then action number 171, all in favor. Thank you, everybody. We got through the empowered section. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Council. Council Perino, do you have a question?
Yes, Chair, through you, I'm just interested if we might hear from the person who suggested the removals. I'd be interested in their opinion, if they wish to share.
If they wish to share, but no pressure.
I think it was probably me, Chair.
Councillor Brown, any comment?
No real comment. I look at the total cost of projects before us and do not see anywhere close to the amount of budget we need to complete it. So I just think a lot of the stuff being included isn't realistic in a 0 to 4 year time frame.
Oh, fair enough. Thank you. All right. Now, Ms. Gurry, is this a good time for our break?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it would be a great time to get a little bit refreshed and onto the next session before we get on to the next session. And thank you for bearing with us through this morning or this afternoon. It's a work in progress, so.
No, it's gone well so far, I think. Let's say 10 minutes to 3, 2:50, we'll reconvene. Thank you.
This is the 2018 redux of the lighting at Nanaimo's historic bastion. I've had the pleasure of being part of the relighting project on this amazing building in downtown Nanaimo. So what we did is we replaced the original high-pressure sodium lights, which basically did an okay job of lighting up the bottom 10 feet of the building, and replaced them with modern LED lighting that has the capacity to change color. We can run through a number of different colors that we have pre-programmed here in a pink, a purple, a green. Probably my favorite on here is Rainbow Chase for Pride Week. It'll actually run all the way around the building all the time.
With this new technology, organizations can now request that the bastion be lit to promote their cause by going to the City of Nanaimo website and following the instructions. Go to Your Government, Bastion Lighting Requests, complete the lighting request form, and submit. You will hear from us within a couple days if your request has been approved, and the bastion will be lit in the colors that you have requested. If you have any questions, please contact the Mayor's office at 250-755-4400.
So the next time you're in downtown Nanaimo at night, come on and check out the new dynamic lighting at the Bastion.
This is Nanaimo, and it's a city that's growing. With over 100,000 people now calling Nanaimo home, the demands on our infrastructure have never been greater. From the streets that interweave and connect us all together, to the facilities that we recreate in, to the parks that offer us an escape to nature, there's one significant guiding force that makes it all possible: the city budget.
So the city collects money from a variety of different sources, including user fees, government grants, casino revenues, investment income, etc. However, property taxes are the main source of income for the city and account for about 60% of the total revenues collected.
Regardless of which neighborhood you live in, property taxes have helped shape nearly every aspect of the city.
The budget continues to focus on public safety and provides support to our most vulnerable populations. However, property taxes also fund everything from the police and fire services that show up when you call 911 to the streets being plowed when it snows, as well as sports fields being mowed and all the cultural and recreational amenities that the city has to offer.
As well as property taxes, rates based on actual usage, or user rate fees, fund the services and infrastructure that keep Nanaimo flowing. Imagine even a day without clean, healthy drinking water, curbside recycling waste and organics pickup, and sewers for wastewater. These all protect public health and the environment.
Utility user rate bills are sent out 3 times per year and pay for water, sanitary, sewer, and waste collection services. So these fees contribute to the budget and pay for operating expenditures, investment in new and renewed infrastructure, as well as any debt repayment for these utilities.
Like a bicycle, a car, or even a home, all of the city's infrastructure degrades over time. Maintenance planning, lifespan, and replacement has to be scheduled and accounted for.
The city has stewardship over $3 billion in assets and has 3 asset management reserves to help fund the replacement of these. Since 2013, property taxes have increased by 1% per year to fund asset management.
The city's infrastructure also allows for a great variety of recreational opportunities, like all of the great programming found in the quarterly Parks, Recreation, and Culture activity guides.
Registration and drop-in fees help reduce the amount of taxation needed to fund these recreational services. So these services are not fully funded through user fees, but they do help keep recreation alive in Nanaimo.
And of course, Nanaimo's infrastructure, city services, and recreation programming are all managed by People Power. Rounding out the benefits of the budget, the city also plans for arts, culture, and reconciliation opportunities that really give Nanaimo vibrancy and renewed appeal.
It takes a lot to keep our growing city running and provide the infrastructure and services that people not only want, but need. The annual budgeting process ensures that we can make that happen.
For an in-depth look at our budget, visit the city's website at www.nanaimo.ca. And while you're out there, enjoy the city that your tax dollars continue to build.
Our emergency routes, they are priority routes. They consist of roads that go to and from the hospitals, from the fire department stations, and from the BC ambulance stations. They're also their main commerce routes through the city of Nanaimo. So this allows commerce to happen during a snow event. So we hit those roads first. Once those are clear and open, then we move into the secondary roads, and then we move into the residential areas, which are dead-end roads and cul-de-sacs. And it can take up to 96 hours before we get into the residential areas. One of the side effects of plowing snow is it does end up on the sidewalk, and this can be very frustrating for homeowners and business owners that have just cleaned the sidewalk. It also pulls into their driveways. The crews try to keep it as close to the curb as they can, but we need to open the road right up to the curb to allow the drains to be exposed for when the snow starts to melt.
This is one of the City of Nanaimo Public Works snow and ice control vehicles. And this is actually set up for a brining unit right now, or anti-icing. And what brine is a 23.3% sodium chloride solution. And it comes out of the spray bars down here at the bottom, and it's made here at the Public Works yard. It's a proactive method of snow and ice control, as when we know that there's a winter storm coming, we can actually lay this down on the road prior to the event.
By putting the brine down before the snow comes, it buys time. It lets us get on the roads, and then when we hit it with the plows, it doesn't stick. The snow doesn't stick, it comes off much easier. Whereas if we didn't brine, the snow has an opportunity to freeze to the road.
So another benefit of the brining or anti-icing unit is that during the frosty mornings, we can have it drive down the road, and then immediately the frost disappears as they're applying the brine.
Brine's a great tool for us. It's very cost effective. We can stretch our hard-pressed tax dollars to the maximum. We can make brine for cents on the dollar.
So the other thing that we ask is that everyone stays back from these anti-icing or any winter maintenance vehicles, as they have limited visibility and it's poor conditions out there, and they're trying to maneuver around everything. So just stay back and give them a little bit of room to operate and clear the roads.
So here we are in the Public Works Yard, City of Nanaimo, and what you look around, you can see our various tools that we use for snow and ice fighting. We have tandem trucks, 4x4 trucks, we have backhoes. All our trucks are capable of having front plows on them, and the larger trucks we have belly plows on them as well, and they all have a salter sander that can be mounted on the back.
This is another tool in our winter maintenance fleet. It's a salting machine. And what happens is that the salt gets loaded into this hopper, and on this conveyor where it gets hit with these two saddle tanks, which are full of brine. Then it comes out here on the spreader. And why we add the brine is that it reduces the amount of spray from the salt, so it doesn't bounce nearly as far, saving about 20 to 30% of our salt. As well, by using the anti-icing liquid on the salt, the activation starts right as it hits the road.
The purpose of the salt is to keep the roads bare, keep ice from forming on the road. Again, safety for everyone, including ourselves and the public. That's why we put the salt down.
Today we're talking about clearing catch basins or road drains on residential roads. The first thing to understand is where the catch basin is in proximity to your residence. When clearing a catch basin or road drain, we want to make sure that you make yourself visible and aware of oncoming traffic. When clearing snow or debris from a catch basin, we ask that you put it in an area where it will not plug the catch basin again, not placing it on an already shoveled driveway or sidewalk. Sandbags are available at 2020 Labio Road 24/7. Just remember to make sure you bring a shovel. The City of Nanaimo and Public Works appreciate your help in keeping your catch basins clear. Thank you.
And we're back.
Okay, I believe we're going to have Mr. Lindsay speak. No, okay. we're going to move on to the green section. So if you could please change the slide over to the next one. Prior to going on to greenhouse gas emission reduction topic, we will have Ting Pan speak on behalf of action number 3 prior to you voting on it.
Ms. Tian.
Good afternoon. I just want to give you, Council, a quick update on the action number 3. So this is an active project that's happening right now. And you may recall that there is a report in February to the Finance and Audit Committee that we applied for BC Hydro grant to support kind of developing a higher step code adoption as well as the greenhouse gas emission requirements for new construction. So we did get the grant from BC Hydro, and the industry consultation workshop has already been scheduled. That's going to be on May 9th. So staff is working currently with the RDN and member municipality staff to do this region-wide engagement. And then on May 1st, the updated BC Building Code is going to be released. And that is the tool the province is giving local governments to regulate the greenhouse gas emissions of the energy systems within the buildings. So we plan to bring a report back to council probably in June with policy recommendations. And if we have the policy recommendations adopted, then there will be city bylaws, like building bylaws amendment brought forward for implementation probably in early 2024. So I just want to give a quick update on that item because it is an active project.
So just to be clear, to clarify, we will be presumably following the lead of the provincial government and their guidelines?
So the province is releasing an addition zero carbon step code as of May 1st. So they will release a timeline when the provincial implementation will be. And the recommendation from this action is that we want to have those policy implemented before the provincial timeline. So we'll bring back the recommendation as to after we have consulted with the industry to give you options to consider.
I see. Thank you.
Thanks.
I see no other questions.
Okay, we will move forward to launching a poll for greenhouse gas emissions and reductions. And if there's any additional actions that the committee would like to bring forward, we'll do them after the vote. Oh, and just to clarify, if Councillor Brown could just confirm that he's received the poll through some kind of visual motion every time we launch it, that would be great. Thank you.
And I saw a thumbs up there, so we're good to go.
Thank you, everyone. The poll is now complete. So for action number 1, ongoing, we have 8 in favor of keeping as a priority. Action number 2, 5 in favor of keeping it, 2 for removing it, and 1 requesting further discussion, so that action will remain. Action number 3, 5 in favor of keeping it, 1 for removing, 2 requesting further discussion. Action number 4, 5 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting to remove it, and 2 requesting further discussion. Action number 5, 4 in favor of keeping it, 2 requesting to remove it, and 2 requesting further discussion. So if I read out the action, it reads, update development permit requirements to include energy, climate, and water efficiency from a site and building design perspective. Develop guidelines that may include passive design techniques, shading, rainwater management, green roofs, building orientation, water-wise landscape, building energy systems, and renewable power generation, among other topics. So we'll open up to the committee to discuss this action further and to vote on it.
All right, I'll just comment that Mayor Krogh has a quick interview to do, so he completed the survey, but he's had to step out of the room for a couple of minutes. And I voted further discussion because this seems to be a very, very large topic and multifaceted. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Chair. And actually, I ditto on your words. I thought it was a huge discussion, but I also thought certainly we would have some development permit requirements to require certainly some of these particular items. Or am I wrong?
Through the chair to Councillor Perino, we have the opportunity to explore this in a lot more depth than we currently have policy for under our development permit guidelines. And so this would be basically saying to council, if it's a priority for you in the next 0 to 4 years, we would come forward with draft wording for you to consider looking at.
Okay.
So
thank you.
And I just wanted to note, with respect to Councillor Brown, we received some potential additions or amendments to this section, and I noticed that priority 4, there's some amended wording. So I just wanted to flag that for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, and I see Councillor Brown has his hand up, so I'll go to him next.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Ms. Bullpulsing. I wasn't sure how to address some of them because so with respect to this one, you know, in general, I'm supportive. However, I think there's been a lot of ongoing discussion in this particular space, particular development permit area guidelines and low carbon energy system bylaws. And the whole intention of that discussion occurring is, and you know, in some of this discussion, you know, 2 weekends ago had it with quite a prominent municipal lawyer in British Columbia, is can existing pieces of legislation be pushed further to actually have some meat in them? So when it comes to development permit area guidelines around GHG reductions, traditionally they have been implemented in quite a weak way, and it was often thought the legislation was limiting. However, a lot of people now aren't convinced that it may be as limiting as it was, and so there is jurisdictions and there's municipal lawyers that are doing a little deeper dive into that. So it's not that I'm for this or against this, it's just that if we are going to do something, I think we should be doing it with knowing full well the extent of our powers. And if they're limited, then maybe not spend time on that and move to more an advocacy role. And if there is something that we could be doing, then maybe there's less advocacy we would need to be doing because we do have tools we can implement. So I know Councillor Gesselbrock distributed some motions there this morning. The first 2 under additional information motions were essentially this, requesting information reports on development permit area powers and also low carbon energy system bylaws be obtained with a legal review, so we have a complete understanding of where we might go with this, and then we can make a decision from there. So, Chair, I'm not sure how you'd want to approach that, but I would like to move those 2 motions at some point to get that information before maybe crystallizing whether this appears in the action plan. Thank you.
And Ms. Gurry, you wish to respond?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and through you to Councillor Brown. I think the way we planned on doing this is right now we're talking about the one item that needed further discussion, number 5, on the list there. And then once that is voted on again, as Ms. Kasia Bagan said, that we would at the end take those further motions and clarifications, additions, or amended wording, but we'll just deal with the one that we're talking about right now. There's one more to talk about in the poll, and then we'll go back and do that.
Chair, if I might respond to that, those two motions speak directly to needing more information before I'd feel comfortable voting on number 5. Thank you.
So my interpretation of this, Councillor Brown, would be that if we are talking about amending some of the action plan recommendations or discussions, that's fine. Additional information motions, which might in fact require information, supplemental information from staff, would be better, in my opinion, served by either coming to a separate future GPC meeting or being brought forward as a notice of motion at the council level. That's my interpretation. I'll go to Councillor Geselbrock for his comment.
Thank you. My understanding is that number 5 is in generalities. I think it speaks to that include energy, which is looking at the low carbon energy systems. But I think these information reports speak to the degree of scope, and to understand how much we can do or not really is going to depend upon that legal review and getting clarity what the powers are. And so I think that potentially, if we could have the vote on this item and then just add those information reports at, after this closes. I guess my question to Councillor Brown is, do these added information reports somehow influence updating the development permit requirements to include all those items regardless, or is it really just a matter of giving us information on the scope? Does it affect, does the outcomes of these affect number 5?
Is that a question through to Councillor Brown?
Yeah, to get to Councillor Brown.
Yeah, if it's okay through you, Chair, I would say, there was a motion in there that speaks to advocacy to the provincial government on moratorium of new natural gas connections to discourage fuel switching. Such advocacy may not be required if the low carbon energy system bylaw regime and the development permit regime can be pushed further to have better regulation on how that type of infrastructure is deployed at the municipal level. That's not, so right now I think it presents as a very binary option, that moratorium, and that there actually may be under item number 5 a type of bylaw and policy level regime that could allow you to be a little more nuanced with such a position and how it's implemented at the local level. So Chair, I will follow your guidance on this. Essentially, at the end of the day, I'm supportive of number 5. It's just I just do think council would be better positioned to rank some of these and decide if they wanted to go with them and additional information, and if it's best to move those motions once we've gone through them near the end of this meeting. I'm happy to follow whatever your preference is. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm seeing no other speakers. This is my preference, Councillor Brown, that we're in the middle of dealing with number 5 on the poll. I'd prefer to deal with what is in front of us. If there are specific amendments to the wording which we have in front of us, that's one thing. But these additional information motions, all 3 of them, ask for reports to be prepared to come back to council, which might be a good thing, but I don't think right now is the appropriate place to interject that. And again, I would suggest either a future GPC or, of course, by way of notice of motion for a future council meeting. So that's my interpretation, and that's the direction that I would prefer to see us go.
Chair, thank you. Just for your information, they didn't appear on the agenda, but these 2 in a different form were submitted as notice of motions to the CAO, mayor, and corporate clerk. Similar wording, and they didn't appear on the agenda. So just trying to best understand how that process works, especially with these actually being topic of today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I'll look to Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm sorry if I wasn't clear at the start of this meeting. Councillor Brown is correct. There was some slight differences, but he did propose notices of motion for, I believed it was a council meeting. But having this be on the agenda today, and in some conversations that we were having to try to figure out how to do this best, I thought, and what I tried to convey at the start of the meeting, as this is a GPC, and it lacks the formality of a council meeting, and because this is on the agenda, that we would allow, after going through these processes, any additional information reports, requests for reports, that we would allow the motion after we were done this process today for a vote, and then we would return to either a future GPC or council meeting with those reports should they pass a motion.
So let me be clear, Ms. Gurry, then, and I appreciate that information. So you're suggesting we finish the process in front of us, and when that is completed, then Councillor Brown is welcome to introduce these motions for reports, and that will be brought forward to either a future GPC or council meeting.
Exactly, yeah. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear at the start of the meeting, but yes. And as well, like you were saying, Chair, any amendments, that's different. They can be made as we go through, but these additional information reports definitely have those motions after we're done this process, and we'll come forward to a future meeting with those reports.
So that is my preference, and to me that makes sense, so I hope you're okay with that, Councillor Brown. Thank you very much. So that brings us back to the situation regarding recommendation or action plan number 5. And I'm thinking that we're probably going to need to re-vote, but I'm not sure how to deal with the fact that His Worship has been called away for a few minutes. Can we come back to this?
We could delay the vote.
Oh.
Excellent.
While we give His Worship time to get settled, there is one other.
I could read note number 6. So number 6.
Let's deal with that quickly first.
We had 6 in favor of keeping as a priority, 1 to remove, and 1 for further discussion, so that action will remain. And now for Mayor Krogh, we will be voting on number 5 through a motion.
So, sorry,
and I can read
Mayor
it
Krogh,
again.
you missed the discussion on this, but we are going to be re-voting on number 5. And I don't know if staff has any summary of our discussion or councillors wish to add further comment at this point. If not, then we will re-vote. Ms. Bhopal Singh is looking at me in an amazed manner.
Through the chair, I think, and forgive me everyone for my own need for clarification, there's a possibility that once you consider the motions from Councillor Brown, that this one is put on the back burner till we get those reports. And so I just want to let you know that at the end, when we summarize everything, we can potentially put this one as not an immediate priority until you get those reports from council. And that's the fluidity of this, is although you're doing the first cut of this, you do get the chance to update it and amend it. And so I'm just seeing a link between number 5 and what Councillor Brown is suggesting is getting the information that actually puts clarification on whether this is a priority. Through the chair to Councillor Brown, does that summarize that? Okay, thank you.
And if I may, Your Worship, while you were out of the room, Councillor Brown made mention of the additional information motions which he had supplied this morning, I believe it was, and he is agreeable to bringing those forward after we finish dealing with the action plans in front of us. So that's where we're at on that. And there you are.
Thank you, Chair. And if I may, I mean, it's update development permit requirements to include all of these things. That's the kind of thing, if you're going to if you're going to support it, I think we really have to know exactly what that means. Now, I appreciate that if we approve this, then staff is required to take action on it. right? That's the guts of this. I'm not sure that I'd want to necessarily implement it until I saw what you're requiring. Because realistically, when you're in the middle of a housing crunch and the vacancy rate is below 1%, I'm not entirely sure how much more of a burden we can place on builders and ultimately the consuming public in pursuit of environmental goals. I mean, we're in a challenging time, and if I'm going to make what will amount with respect to decisions like this that are almost operational in nature, because this really is the nitty-gritty, I think I'd want more information, to be quite candid.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Geselbrock.
Thank you, Worship. You know, I think that this is an important direction to go. I think the motions that Councillor Brown put forward really are going to determine scope. I think we're in a situation, and you know, it's really what the donut economy is about. It's like, it's not choosing one or the other, but we're in a situation where both issues around climate and adaptation and providing housing are, you know, imminent needs that are putting, you know, a lot of pressure in our community, and we've got to do both and advance that together and integrate it. So I think we should vote for this, and then it will be adjusted as further information comes from the motions from Tyler Brown. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Ms. Bhopal-Singh, your advice, are we re-voting or are we leaving this until a future date?
That's a very good question. I'm going to bounce it to Ms. Scurry. Oh, Mr. Lindsay.
Mr. Chairman, I could suggest that if council is comfortable, you could simply amend the word to be more aspirational, that you'll review options for development permits. So it doesn't commit council to anything under this section. It's basically we're reviewing the opportunity to expand development permits, and then the motion that I understand is coming up subsequently would actually put us on a path to do that further review for implementation. So this would be I would think of this as the high level action, and then what's coming later is an actual gathering more information about options around that action. So I think both can survive, both can exist independently.
All right, Ms. Bhopal-Singh, that's clear as mud. So are we re-voting now? I'm sorry, I'm asking your advice.
Absolutely. So what I recommend, and I like Mr. Lindsay's suggestion, is that we would amend the wording and vote on that. So what he's suggesting is instead of update, we use the wording review options for development permit requirements, and then that gives the flexibility for Councillor Brown's motion to complement this. And I would argue that we should be doing some of that legal review as part of the background to what we'd bring forward to you anyway. And then that would give you a sense of how powerful a tool are DPs versus other options. So my recommendation is that you vote on this, but with the amended wording, instead of update, review options for updating.
All right, I think that makes sense to me. Hopefully council is agreeable with that change in wording. So replacing the word update with review options for development. For updating development permit requirements, etc. All right, council, so I will ask all in favor, please.
That I can support.
I see Councillor Eastmere, Geselbrock, Hemmons, Thorpe, Mayor Krogh, Councillor Perino, and Councillor Brown's hand, I believe, is up, and Councillor Manley. So I believe that is unanimous. Thank you for your help, Ms. Bhopal-Singh.
Thank you, Ms. Bhopal-Singh. Okay, we'll move on to climate adaptation and hazard management. So we have...
Sorry, Councillor Geselbrock.
Just a question. Is it the moment to move the amendment to item 4?
Please.
Okay. So I'd like to move that priority 4 of a green Nanaimo be replaced with complete an inventory of energy use and greenhouse gas emissions of all community buildings to identify building energy upgrade opportunities and challenges by building type, and immediately develop a financing and rebate program to accelerate the replacement of high carbon energy systems with low carbon energy systems.
Okay, so if the committee can vote on the new wording of that
So-
action?
So there is a proposed amendment. Do we need a seconder, I would assume? Councillor Eastmuir. And I'm certainly agreeable to putting that on the floor, but I would appreciate being able to see the original wording.
So the change is from consider developing a finance and rebate program to accelerate to immediately develop a financing and program to accelerate. And I think Councillor Brown has his hands up to speak to it more, to provide some more context.
All right, Councillor Brown, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, essentially, we've already been dabbling in the rebate program through Clean BC program and adding to it. But yes, a complete inventory of the greenhouse gas emissions would be absolutely excellent. But we know from the work that Duncan, last name escapes me, did through the Reimagine Nanaimo process and the workshops with council, which he was present. When asked point blank what were some of the most important policies, he talked about fuel switching, in particular, moving people off of oil heating to a lower carbon energy source. So I think we have the data to know that this is an immediate area that needs attention and has a relatively high bang for its buck in terms of how cities' dollars are spent and meeting the goals of Reimagine Nanaimo, especially on condensed timelines that are not just 2050, but working backwards from 2050. So, we have an existing type of rebate. We have existing data to a degree that we know that this would be worth exploring and implementing and have impact. So all this does is, I think, just tighten the language up, acknowledge that we have programs that we can be building off of, and expanding and augmenting them to meet the goals that have been adopted and reimagined. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking to the amendment which is on the floor, Mayor Krog.
Thank you very much, Chair. And the wording that's proposed talks about community buildings, all community buildings. So do I interpret that to mean public buildings only? No, I assume it's all community buildings in the community. And then to immediately, which is pretty demanding, develop a financing and rebate program to accelerate the replacement. That has significant budgetary implications for the city of Nanaimo. And as much as I'm appreciative of trying to show leadership, it strikes me that this is exactly the kind of thing where you look to the province to impose requirements on everybody. I'm not sure the good citizens of Nanaimo, all 102,000 of them, are prepared to lead the way with the cost and proposed change that this might require. The other reality is that, of course, the people who will be in a position to use the rebate program will probably be people who already are fairly well off. I don't think it's going to necessarily impact on those on the lower end of the economic scale. It also potentially creates a fairly significant bureaucracy. The existing wording talks about an inventory, but it's not setting a demanding time frame on it that I think is frankly a little more realistic in terms of what the city can accomplish with respect to climate change. I mean, I appreciate there's a legitimate argument saying we wouldn't do anything in Nanaimo because, after all, 102,000 on a planet of 7 billion, it's a waste of time. I get that. That's the argument. I'm not suggesting that. But I do think when it comes to this kind of proposal within the confines of a city, when there are 5 million people in this province, it's just not a very realistic approach. I wouldn't go so far as to say, in any sarcastic sense, a sort of virtue signaling, but it will be expensive and it will make us stand out. And again, not necessarily in a positive way for a community that is already upset about a tax increase, that already thinks we aren't doing some of the basics very well. I mean, How many, this isn't seen as the crisis in our community that demands our political and financial attention. So I can't say that I would be prepared to support the proposed motion that Councillor Brown has brought forward. I'm happy to be consistent and remain with the existing one that it is set out, but not the proposed amendment.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Brown next, and then Councillor Geselbrecht.
Thanks, Chair. I'll be very quick. Just in response, the province has already stepped up. It has the Clean BC Fund. Other communities have been augmenting that program better with more additional funds. So again, we have a framework that we can build off of that was funded by the last council. And so that program was started. I think there's ways that we can continue it, and that is a community level program. You will recall at that time there was discussions around ensuring that there was if possible, we could implement a equity portion of that to combat, I think, a rightful concern of grant programs only being available for those that can afford them. Province was working on that. I'm not sure where they're at now. But I think these are all discussions that could happen as that program gets built out. So really it comes down to, it's very, as Duncan was very clear, it is the low hanging fruit and something that would have good bang for the buck at the municipal level. We're already spending money on it. We do have a reserve fund that is available. So it can just be built out a little bit. So I hope council will support this because it is direct action within our jurisdiction that we can assist with to account for some of the existing building stock that is going to be highly problematic when it comes to GHG reductions and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Geselbrecht.
Thank you, Worship. Just speaking to the equity piece, I appreciate Mayor Krog bringing that up. I think it's an important consideration, and I think it's something that we can work into the framework. A lot of times, say for somebody that's stuck with an old oil heater, a lot of times they don't have the capital to actually get it changed out. So one, they're paying through the nose for the oil, very inefficient system. And they just don't have the money to be able to get them passed to get it changed out. So in fact, you can be helping a lot of people who are, having an affordability problem if you have the program right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Geselbrecht. So again, I note that the original action plan number 4 was approved by council, and we confirmed that today. Now we are dealing with an amendment to the wording, and I will call the question on the proposed amendment. I will just state that I appreciate the intent, but I am very concerned about the financial implications. So regarding the amended language, all those in favor, please. Councillor Eastmuir, Geselbrecht, Hemmens, Manley, and Brown. And those opposed, Councillor Perino, Thorpe, and Mayor Krog. And that passes. Thank you.
Thank you
Question?
very much.
Councillor Perino.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So just reading the amendment that is now passed, are we seriously suggesting complete an inventory of energy use and greenhouse gas emissions of all community buildings? And I'm not sure if that should go to Councillor Brown, but are you kidding? All community buildings?
Well, Councillor Perino, I think that question was answered in the affirmative, and that's my understanding. So I appreciate your question. I think it's a little bit rhetorical at this point, but yes.
You're right.
If I may, Chair, and I do have to sign off here, so I won't be able to attend to the rest of the meeting, so I apologize, but just so everybody's aware, the one that was passed by council, that's exactly what it said. The only thing that changed was the later half of this particular motion. So that was respect to developing a home energy upgrade program. But the original, as submitted in your package that was approved by council, one vote below before, was complete an inventory of energy use and greenhouse gas emissions of all community buildings. So and that part did not change.
Thanks, Councillor Brown. You're quite right. All right, we need to
Through the
go to
chair.
Ms. Bhopal Singh.
Through the chair to Councillor Perino and all of you, I wonder if we might give Ms. Pan a chance to answer the question around the all community and also some of the ways in which that can be done. Thank you.
Ms. Tian.
Thank you, through the chair to Councillor Perino. So the work on the inventory that is currently being done by the regional district of Nanaimo for all the electoral areas and the municipalities. So this work is almost done. That's for all the buildings, all the transportations, and what we aim to have is an annual inventory being updated for the community level emissions inventory. And one other thing related to this action is that we already got the funding from FCM to do a more detailed inventory, mostly focusing on homes. So one of the challenges for us to establish a financing program right away is we don't really know how many oil heated homes and where they are. So that work is also underway. So once we have that information, that would really help set us up for designing the financing program. So I hope that information is
Thank you for that information. Appreciate it. All right, I believe we're ready to move on.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Move on to climate adaptation and hazard management. So we will now launch the poll. And just to confirm, is Councillor Brown off of the call now? So
I
down to
don't
7?
see him any longer, and he did indicate that he was signing off.
So we'll go for 7 votes. Thank you.
All right, we're into the next poll.
Yeah, the poll has now launched. The poll is now complete. So for action number 7, 5 in favor of keeping it, 2 requesting discussion. Number 8, all in favor of keeping as a priority. Moving on to action number 9, we have 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting to remove it. Action number 10, 5 in favor of keeping it, 1 to remove it, 1 needing further discussion. Action number 11, 5 in favor of keeping it, and 2 in favor of requesting further discussion. And then lastly, number 12, second to last, number 12 is 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 to remove it. And then now lastly, number 13 is all in favor of keeping it. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to urban tree canopy.
Sorry, could I just ask a question? I'm trying to
please.
find the right number. It was... sorry, I can't find it now. Related to sea level rise?
I believe that is
10.
Oh, number 10, develop a sea level rise management plan.
Yeah, thank you. I think I voted further discussion simply because I know that there's been a lot of work on this topic done through the Regional District of Nanaimo, and I wondered if we can piggyback on the data that they have collected.
Through the chair, in response to that, that is exactly the intent. And I think maybe I can also turn to maybe Mr. Sims and some others in the audience. This is more about taking the information that has given us the risk levels and then looking at how we prioritize managing those risks. I don't know if Mr. Sims would like to add some more.
Mr. Chair, this item, the regional district did a number of quite a bit of work. We used a different methodology in some of the work that we did. So there may be some differences. However, that's immaterial. This would take into consideration things along the foreshore, such as the North Slope and impacts from rising sea levels or wave action, and similar with the waterfront walkway as well. So it looks at the infrastructure vulnerability along those foreshores as well as some of the vulnerable slopes.
All right, thank you.
And if I could just add, with the extreme weather strategy, you might recall that we put in a funding application a little while ago on that, and we were successful in getting it. So you'll see that the budget's already allocated, and that work is already underway. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Okay. So move on to urban tree canopy, natural areas and greenways. So there's 3 items to vote on here, but I will note that through the email that came through, there is a request potentially to, I believe, either amend or add a new action. So we'll discuss that after we vote on these ones. So we'll launch the poll now.
All right.
Poll is now complete. So on the topic of urban tree canopy, we have number 14. We have 6 in favor of keeping it, 1 for removing it. Action number 15, all in favor of keeping as a priority. Action number 16, okay, you moved in on me. Also all in favor of keeping as a priority. And that concludes the voting on that one. So I could read the other motion, or I'll leave it to the committee to bring it forward if you'd like for further discussion.
No, I can move it for
Okay.
discussion. Yeah.
Would you like me to read it out, or would you like to read it?
I can read it. Yeah.
Councillor Geselbrock has prepared this. Let's turn to him.
So I'd like to move that the following be included as a priority action of a green Nanaimo under urban tree canopy, natural areas and greenways. To update the urban forest management strategy, conduct a tree canopy assessment, and update tree protection bylaws and development guidelines to bring urban tree management into alignment with city plan objectives.
Seconded by Mayor Krogh. Discussion, Councillor Geselbrock.
Thanks. So just trees are actually a massive infrastructure component of the city. You know, if you buy mass, they take up a lot of space, and they provide, you know, wind protection. They have a substantial impact on temperature regulation, stormwater management, outside of, you know, providing habitat for a bunch of wildlife, and then, you know, the aesthetic components of them. We've had a tree management bylaw, or a tree management strategy. It's over 10 years old now, and in that time we're noticing increased storm events. So wind is increasing, and we're noticing blowdown all over the place, which is huge in terms of impact on infrastructure, both property and, you know, life. Because of the rains, the root systems are reacting differently, and it increases the chances of blowdown, and we're seeing that happen along streams. So there's a change in risk level, and also just with increased development, there is a lot of interaction with people and trees in terms of development permitting, and there's issues that come up with the development community around tree permits and how that's issued. I know that in terms of just our capacity as a city to manage our trees, you know, we're having trouble, I think, keeping up just managing the trees in our parks. And we've had the tree bylaw and the development permit guidelines in place for a while now, and there's not really much data to say, you know, what has been the impact of having these in place over the last 10, 15, 20 years. So that's what the tree canopy assessment comes in, to look at, like, how's our urban tree canopy shifted, you know, looking at the different sectors, and what policies, what are we trying to achieve so that our policies align with that and the official community plan. I think that there's a need to, update our overall strategy in this to take into account the changes that we're seeing with climate, the increased risk and risk management around trees, and understanding when we are putting in new trees and new development, that they are properly fitted to what the future environment is going to look like. And I think all those are very complex. I think it requires more resourcing. When we look at, we have 2 staff right now that are in charge, you know, working specifically on trees, you know, one with bylaws, and then also that does planning, the urban forester, to just look at what our capacity is like. And then in the additional actions, I don't think it was in the priority, staff had already flagged that we need to review our tree permit bylaw and also the development guidelines for better alignment. And so this would just be adding the update of the tree management plan and the canopy assessment, so that we've got some data on where we're going. And I know there's some subtleties in how to actually do that measurement. Different sectors of the city are different. You go on Protection Island, people are freaking out all the time about the tree bylaw because they're being asked to protect trees, and it's covered in trees when they're trying to, you know, put a home there. And then there's other parts of the city that don't have the same type of tree cover, and the same permitting exists on there. And so I think there is a lot of work to be done in this area, and I think that we need to be thorough, and this being a 4-year plan, this is something I hope that we can accomplish. And of course there will be discussion, you know, if we to achieve this, you know, what is the level of resourcing needed. So thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Perino and then Mayor Krog. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Chair. And a question through you to staff. Given, and I appreciate and thank Councillor Gessebruck for putting this on the table, but I'm just, it says update the urban tree canopy management strategy. So we have a strategy already, right? How far behind is it in staff's opinion, and do you not keep this up to date to the best of your ability?
Mr. Harding.
Thank you, Worship. So the tree management plan or tree strategy is shared within a few departments. We work on it. One of to answer a little bit of the question, what we've been trying to focus on, particularly in the parks, recreation culture side of the park system, is do some stand management analysis. Because what we find, we can continue to go out and do where the overall canopy is, but where we really need, as Councillor Gessebruck mentioned, we really need to get working within our existing large stands of park areas. So that's what we've been focusing on is doing specific stand management assessments, and then trying to implement from there. Definitely can go back and do an overall tree stand or canopy, but that's going to give you more of a picture of where it is now versus the number of years ago. It doesn't really help us getting into those areas that need assistance, particularly some of our older park areas, Bowen Park, Colliery Park, some of the other areas we picked up, particularly Lindley Valley. You'll notice some of the objectives today of some of the management we need to do in Lindley Valley, all the tree systems in there. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, but there still is a lot of work still to be objectives in the existing tree management plan or strategy, urban tree strategy, that still needs to be achieved. That can be definitely brought back to council and say what have we done and what hasn't been done.
So my question, it literally was, this motion is quite involved. My question to you is, do we need it, or are you already doing enough? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be putting you on the spot, but what I'm trying to figure out is, this is a big motion. So do we need to have it to this extent, or are you already doing enough to take care of the city's tree canopy?
Chair, Councillor Perino, I think I need to talk to Councillor Gesselbrecht and Councillor Brown more of what is specifically on this overall tree canopy assessment, because there's different ways of doing that. There's a tabletop version of doing that where you're looking at, aerial imagery and you're looking at that, or are we looking at drilling down into every private and publicly owned properties and what is in each of those areas? Okay. So we'd have to have some clarification on how detailed you want to go, because yes, you could spend a lot of time on assessing.
That's right.
What's out there that's privately owned, publicly owned, and then. So how far down do you want to drill into those assessments? Okay, so
Given what I'm hearing from you, I'll be voting against this because I think the depth of it is too much to do at this point. I think it's something that requires further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Krug.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not going to go on at length about this. Look, the import of this is basically to encourage the planting of more trees. That's ultimately what it's all about. That's a healthy thing for the environment. It's a healthy thing for our community. But I do appreciate Councillor Perino's comments around the level of work involved, and I think, we have to rely on staff in this particular case to do what is reasonable in the circumstances. But, I've said before many times, and it didn't seem to get much uptake, I mean, it's practical, it's real, it can be done, it doesn't require a great depth of study. Plant a damn tree, for heaven's sakes. It works.
Thank you. I see no other speakers.
Can I speak again, please?
Very briefly, Councillor Gesselbrecht.
Yeah, I think just speaking to those points, as Mr. Harding spoke, we're barely keeping up with doing the stand management within our parks, and there's a lot of trees in this community that require attention. And so when there's trees that are adjacent in parkland or city-owned property, and there's wind risk with them, and they're breaking, and community members are phoning in, what are we doing about that? Being able to make the risk assessment of, do we take that tree down? Do we prune it? What do we do with it? Right now, we have that pressure on us, and we're being asked to make those risk assessments, at management level, in a reactive basis. I think that's one big issue. Also, too, with redevelopments, currently with our bylaws, I don't even believe that it's written a thing, but we're using 100 trees per hectare replacement because the way that we have it written in our bylaw, every significant tree removed, you have to replace it with 3, and so the math doesn't add up, and so we're doing all this stuff that isn't formalized in our bylaws because we just haven't kept up with the realities of what the development community needs, what our canopy is, and unfortunately, we don't have any objective basis to what we're trying to achieve. Do we really need to be rushing out there and replacing all these trees or not, or trying to maintain these huge Douglas firs that when they, the wind hits them, giant branches fall off? Maybe we should be taking them on, replacing them. We need to look at all that but there's no objective basis to like make that call. We don't know what's been good, what's been useful policy in terms of planting trees and keeping up with what's been being removed or being replaced. We're operating in a black box right now, and it's really important that we keep up with this. And so Cumberland has done a canopy analysis. I think that some thought does need to be put in at what scale, because you can do a canopy analysis of the entire city. You know, we've got 70% coverage, but it's all in one corner. So what sectors make sense? But I do think that we need, for the amount of green infrastructure that's out there, a more sophisticated approach than what we currently have. And I think that it's really important, and it's something that this council can address in this term. And yes, I do think it will acquire more resources than we currently have. But in terms of the issue and the amount of like biomass and structure that's out there, probably a good use of resources compared to like the impact it has in terms of electricity during storms, all these items. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're ready to vote. It's been moved and seconded. No other comments, so all in favor. Councillors Hemmens, Geselbrecht, Eastmuir, Mayor Krogh, and Councillor Manley, and those opposed, Councillor Perino and Thorpe. That passes.
Thank you, everybody.
On
So
we
that
move.
action will be added to the priority list. We'll move on to water, sewer, and storm services. So we have about 5 ongoing actions and a few immediate for your consideration. And we will now launch the poll. That was very fast, thank you. All right, so for water, sewer, and stormwater services, number 17, we have all in favor of keeping it. The same goes for number 18. Going on to number 19, we have in favor of almost, I believe, all the actions. So number 19, number 20, number 21, we're all voted in favor of keeping them as priorities. Thank you, everybody. Okay, we'll move on to solid waste. So 3 ongoing actions here. This is quite a short one, but I do believe there are potential actions that may be considered after this vote. And the poll will now be launched. Solid waste management, number 28 to number 30. Mm-hmm.
22 to 27.
Oh, did I skip? 22. Oh, apologies, yes. My bad. So we could only do 10 questions per poll, and I had 11. So apologies. We have the immediate actions for water, sewer, and stormwater services. So now we will launch that poll. Sorry. Just get over it. Okay. All right, so now for the immediate actions, I believe we have for number 22 and number 23, all in favor of keeping it as a priority. And the same goes for number 24. As for number 25, we had 6 in favor of keeping it and 1 requesting further discussion. And number 26 and number 27, or sorry, apologies, number 26, 7 in favor of keeping it. And for the last action, number 27, 6 in favor of keeping it and 1 requesting further discussion. Is there any further discussion or actions that the committee would like to bring forward relating to this topic? Seeing none, we will move on. Back to solid waste management. Okay, so as I said, there's 3 actions that are all ongoing for your consideration. Okay, the results are now in. So as it relates to solid waste management, we have number 28, 5 in favor of keeping it as a priority, 1 to remove, and 1 requesting further discussion. For action number 29, we have all in favor of keeping it. And for action number 30, we have 6 in favor of keeping it and 1 requesting to remove it. Is there any further discussion or actions that the committee would like to bring forward relating to solid waste management?
So I will confess, for number 30, I was the vote for removing. I probably should have asked for further discussion. I only opted the way I did because I'm not sure how effective these initiatives have been in the past. I personally have not heard many people say that they've taken advantage of them. I guess that's not to say we shouldn't offer them, but I'd be curious if staff has any feedback from past experience.
Mr. Chair, both of these are quite popular, especially I would say the trunk sale is, we get pushed to actually have it more often than not. Originally we had them once a year, now we've moved to twice a year, and still getting pressure to have that particular event.
Good, thank you.
Okay, seeing any other additional actions to add?
I'd like to move that the following be included as a priority action in Green Nanaimo under solid waste management section. To develop and implement a construction, recycling, deconstruction, and demolition bylaw. The bylaw will include measures to reduce the amount of waste that goes to landfill for construction and demolition activities and promote reuse of construction material in Nanaimo.
Seconded by Councillor Hemmons. Discussion.
Chair.
Councillor Geselbrock and then Mayor Crowe.
Thank you. Two deconstruction and demolition bylaws have been successfully implemented in North Vancouver and Victoria. Basically, in Nanaimo and the regional district, we're leaders in solid waste management. We're diverting about 65%, although we probably backslid quite a bit in the last 2-3 years. Still, we've got a goal to achieve 90% diversion in the regional district. Still currently about 58% of materials that are still going to landfill are recyclable, and construction and demolition waste has been identified as a major contributor of that recyclable waste going to landfill, and construction demolition has been identified by the regional district and many other regions, and in Nanaimo with the circular economy investigation as an area of focus. For example, 4 million tons in Canada of construction, renovation, demolition waste is going to landfill, and 37% of that is old growth lumber. So when we look at potential changes to legislation, when we have homes that you can put a fourplex on, there's going to be a lot of demolition that'll be happening in town. And a lot of these materials are very reusable and valuable, offset the cost of the demolition and deconstruction. And there are regulatory mechanisms that municipalities can put in place to incentivize and regulate this. And so this is an area that we can make a huge impact. And already the Regional District Nanaimo has been proactive on this because it's been identified as such a big issue, and have put out a guidebook on deconstruction, demolition, and construction recycling. Our very own Tectonica from town worked with the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange doing a feasibility study on deconstruction and demonstrated the economics of it and how it can work, and with a very detailed plan. So I invite everybody to read that in the report. The next step, of course, is putting in this bylaw, and I think that there's a lot of jobs that can be produced through deconstruction, a lot of materials saved, and a reduced impact on our landfill. And so I think it's a win-win-win all around, and just requires the effort to produce the bylaw and put it. And luckily, a lot of the work has been done by places like Victoria and North Vancouver. Richmond's currently working on a bylaw, and then of course there's jurisdictions in the United States that have been way ahead on this as well. Thank you.
And Mayor Krog. Oh, sorry, I just turned your microphone off, so there we go.
Thank you very much, Chair. It is an entirely noble concept, and throughout history, I'll call it the marketplace, has worked effectively where it was appropriate, having regard to the marketplace and the cost of demolition, etc., that construction materials were recycled, no question about it. Hell, we tore down probably most of ancient civilization in England and Rome and Greece and Turkey and every place else as they scooped the stones off the pyramids or whatever the case may be, because it makes sense. The impact of this, notwithstanding what Councillor Gesselbrock has to say, Chair, is that you will be adding a cost to whatever building is constructed in replacement on that site. That is a reality. And I'm just not sure that at this particular time, when construction costs are through the roof, when it is impossible to find labor anywhere for various positions, that this is the time we want to be imposing on what will amount to largely the housing construction industry. We're not putting up that much commercial construction. I mean, the last time I looked at the statistics, and Mr. Lindsay provides them to us regularly in his shop, we will be adding a further burden to the cost of housing in our community. And it's for that reason I would consider supporting a report to talk about developing a bylaw to look at, to consider, but I'm not prepared to, because this is voting for action, to develop and implement a construction, well, we can't be forced to implement it, but develop a construction, recycling, deconstruction, demolition bylaw at this particular time. Again, is there that much waste going into the landfill, and is the building or construction community right now not utilizing materials that might be going to the landfill? Are they not utilizing them now? Particularly the comments around, ancient timber, et cetera, I get that, and I suspect those builders are probably already doing that. So I'm not sure that I'm prepared. I'm not satisfied that this is the time to do it, nor this is the way to go in these particular circumstances. If we had high unemployment and needed to create jobs, if we had statistics or numbers that would satisfy me that this is really absolutely good for the economy, et cetera, I'd be prepared to support it. But in the present time, with the information available, no, I'm simply not.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Perino as a first-time speaker.
Thank you, Chair. And a question through you to staff again. If I might ask, do we not have, I shouldn't say penalty, but particular fees if you don't separate your construction equipment and so forth, drywall versus metals and so on. We have obviously, right? So that's, is that true?
Mr. Chair, that's mostly the regulation at the regional district level. So that's, I believe they're bringing their mandatory waste separation bylaw. I'm not fully up to speed with where they're at on that particular bylaw. I think those are the sorts of things that we'd want to have in place before bringing in our own bylaw. We'd have to work closely with them.
Thank you. I certainly agree that a bylaw needs to have a good bite on it when construction is being, when demolition materials are being taken to the landfill. They need to be separated out. You have to have your drywall separated from other products. And it's an important piece that at the landfill, through the RDN, has good fee structure and penalty structure to make sure that we do just exactly that. But I certainly agree with Mayor Krogh. To implement more than that at this time, I'm not comfortable. I'd want a whole lot more discussion before I voted in favor. But I certainly agree with the intent, and I'm pleased to see that the intent is there.
Thank you. Any other first-time speakers? Then I'll go back to Councillor Geselbrecht and then call the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Mayor Krogh's concerns are definitely taken to heart, and I can say we're deeply debated down in Victoria. This is kind of reinventing the wheel. All these issues have been really mapped out, and Victoria faces a much tighter housing crunch and affordability crisis. And of course, they moved forward with this, almost 2 years ago. Basically, in these bylaws, there is a phased approach to implementation. First, picking off the easiest, which are single-family homes, before 1950 that are old growth timber. So if you deconstruct it, you're walking away with 20 grand in your pocket. And so that's like an easy one to do that. We don't need to wait for more economic data from it. Victoria, North Van, Richmond have already done the heavy lifting on that. Victoria opted not to do a lot consolidation, where basically if you were a developer and you wanted to do 5 lots of pre-1970 homes with a lot of old growth, they said that the deconstruction bylaw does not need to apply to that because of concerns around affordability. The numbers have come back out, and there's a lot of people. There's actually a company working in Nanaimo called Unbuilders that runs the economics on deconstruction. And on a phone call with this gentleman, which we would be good to have to come to council, he said that Victoria missed a huge opportunity out of fear for not adding the lot consolidations to the bylaw because it was unnecessary, and you can regain what's needed through what can be sold from the lumber. In terms of the questions raised around the source separation, there is going to be a regional district bylaw that requires everyone to sort the waste. Now, how that covers in the construction industry is a little bit of a gray area, and that's why these bylaws are needed by the municipal level to ensure that is occurring, because at the moment it isn't occurring, and a lot of that recycling can be easily done if it's just mandated. You basically put 3 bins out, and there are sometimes some site constraints on space, but all that can be worked out. So I think that we don't need to reinvent the wheel on this, and can proceed in a cautious manner, following the footsteps of probably more cautious jurisdictions than us when it comes to affordability. And so I would, advise to just move forward with this, because this is the direction it's going, and I think that we can actually generate and sort of be early adopters in terms of building the expertise so that, it'll strengthen our economy in other sectors. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Chair. I'm inclined to support this coming from the chair of our Regional Solid Waste Management Committee at the RDN. My question is through to staff. I'm hearing that this is something that some of us think is a good idea, but that it's an actual bylaw. So this isn't we implement it and today it happens. So I'd like to understand the process, how staff are reading this, the process for when this would come about, and the future decision points we'd have on it, please.
Mr. Sims, can you field that one?
Mr. Chair, I think to Councillor Hammond's question, I think the approach would be a few years down the road when we'd want to implement it. So it would take some time. I always recognize that when we have a bylaw that another municipality's adopted, there's always something custom that we need to sort of adapt to, and that's just the timing that it would take to work through it. So yeah, I don't know if that helps, but we'd want to work carefully and closely with the regional district on the source separation bylaw to make sure that they're going to dovetail as well. So there's some time there.
Thank you. So if I may, I'm hearing that this wouldn't be immediately actioned, that this is a somewhat lengthy process that would involve other decision points for council when reflecting on the current policies that we would use to design our own.
Lucy, yes. I agree.
Thank you. Lucy will do.
Thank you. Anybody else? So I'll call the question. I'm just going to comment very quickly that these items related to landfill and solid waste and so on are certainly of importance to all of our citizens, but they are primarily the responsibility of the regional district and the regional district board. And I feel that we should be following the lead of the source separation bylaw, which the RDN is pushing the government to approve. So again, the intent is fine, but I'm not prepared to support this at the time. Councillor Geselbrecht, I see your name up again, but I really think we're ready to call the question.
Sure, I wanted to correct a few points that were just said, but I'm happy to go forward.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So it's on the floor, moved and seconded. We've had discussion. All in favor? Councillors Eastmere, Geselbrecht, Hemmens, and Manley. And those opposed, Councillors Perino, Thorpe, and Mayor Krog. That passes. Thank you.
Okay. Prior to moving forward through the chair, would you like to bring forward the second?
The second one, yep. I'd like to move that the following be included as a priority action in the Green Nanaimo under the solid waste management section. Develop zero waste public events program as part of a waste reduction effort and experiential community education program.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hemmens.
Just to speak to it, this concept of a green events program, basically, when we have an event that, 3 station recycling is provided and that there's efforts to reduce waste in terms of, how food is being consumed and other methods and other considerations is done. I inquired with staff, and this is something that is already a bit of a work program initially with our staff. There's also a group from Halifax that's supporting municipalities run these green events, and I think that it's an important one to prioritize because one, it's walking our walk when events are run, and organizations that are participating in the grant need a bit of support in how to separate their waste and be able to provide reusable materials for food consumption and other activities. And I think that one, it reduces waste, but two, it's a way to really educate the community on what our goals are as a municipality and provide support in wiring those behaviors. So I think it's something that we've started looking at and working on, and I would really like to just confirm that within the work plan for the next 4 years, so that we can really provide that service when we're having community events in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers? Seeing none, I'll just again comment that I feel that we're doing some of this already. I'm all in favor of public education, whatever it's for, but to me, to state that this should be a city priority when it's a regional district function, I think they should be taking the lead on this and spending the necessary funds and time and energy to improve any educational programs that are out there. So again, good idea. I think it's RDN though rather than us. So all in favor? Councillors Eastmere, Gesselbrock, Hemmons, and Manley. And those opposed, Councillor Perino, Thorpe, and Mayor Krog. That passes.
Thank you. Okay, so those two actions will be added to the solid waste management section. And moving on, we got two more topics left. We have brownfield sites and artificial lighting and dark skies. So we have one action to be considered for both, but they're separate polls. So we will launch the brownfield sites. Okay, the poll is now
Only one
complete.
question.
Right, thank you, everybody. So for action number 31 under brownfield sites, all vote in favor of keeping it as a priority. Thank you. And lastly, we have our artificial lighting and dark skies, and I believe there's also potential action to be brought forward after the vote. So we'll launch that poll now. Okay, the poll is now closed. So we had for action number 32, 3 in favor of keeping it, 1 requesting to remove it, and 3 requesting further discussion. So we will open up to the committee to have a further discussion and to vote on this one, please.
Councillor Gesselbrock, is this a new one or a holdover?
This is a new one.
Go ahead then.
All right, thank you, Chair. Through you. This priority, I do have an amendment to make to it, and generally, in favor of it. Just adding completed dark skies assessment of all city parks, facilities, and develop an action plan for improvements. Wanting to include, and I'll move this after, but wanting to include assessment of facilities, infrastructure, including street lighting. I think, we recently did, had feedback on a BC Hydro update on street lighting, and the brightness of these street lights were quite large, and there was definitely some complaints about that, and still to this day. And I think that just needs to be included in the assessment, so that going forward, when we have those decision points, we have policy in place and are ready to address them as needed. So I'll move that after, but that's why I think further discussion is needed on this one. Thank you. To make sure it's broad enough.
And before we go further, I'm going to turn to Ms. Gurry. Are we going to deal with these as this action plan as presented and then subsequently deal with Councillor Gesselbrock, or it's under the heading of an amendment? Do we deal with an amendment and vote on that?
So your chair, it's completely up to you. How I would see it right now is if there was some further discussion needed, those that voted for that, maybe ask your questions, and then maybe Councillor Gesselbrock could move the amended motion for you to vote on. So you're not voting on this motion again and then an amended motion after that. So how about any further discussion that you want to talk about this subject matter, whether it be this or what Councillor Gesselbrock just proposed, then you could vote on the amendment instead of
Let's
this.
get comments from other councillors first then, and then we'll decide. Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Chair. And a question through you to staff. My problem is that I see this word assessment And I just think to myself, oh yeah, another report, right? Another assessment of a situation, which I would think would be part of your continual strategy of whenever a light has to be replaced, it's replaced with a much more non-invasive light that, you know, to allow for more darkness, that kind of thing. I would have just thought that this was just the general practice. Maybe I'm out of line.
Mr. Sims.
Thanks, Chair. To Councillor Perino, I think there's been a number of initiatives on LED lighting. First, the city started out with rolling out a program that's been postponed mostly because of capital, you know, other higher priority capital, pushing that out of the way. Economically, it makes really good sense. We'd save all kinds of money on hydro on our street lighting. Hydro was driven by the need to change out their light fixtures with because of PCB regulations. Those old light fixtures contain PCB regulations. They gave us essentially two choices, and so we pushed as hard as we could to try and keep it, but it still doesn't meet modern lighting standards. They're just the lights on every other pole. So that's kind of, and we sort of struck the balance on a policy level, and I believe we were in front of council a number of years ago on this, but on a policy level, you know, the major roads would have the higher temperature lights, and the minor roads would have a temperature that would be similar to the high pressure sodium. So that's another initiative. So when we do have lights burned out, it's like a like for like replacement at this current at this time, until we can get back to a capital replacement program for our street lights. But I will say that the existing high pressure sodium, which casts this really warm glow, spills everywhere, and that tends to be less, if I can use the word, less dark sky compliant than LED lights, which are very focused. And so the LED lights don't tend to, not only to have a sort of a zero cutoff, in other words, they're shielded and they're focused downwards, but the lighting doesn't reflect and doesn't sort of go all over the place, similar to the old high pressure sodium. It's probably more information than you wanted.
No, it's good. I think my question was more about, don't we already have a plan? Do we need an additional assessment?
We do have a plan in place, but I would say that the motion, this sort of takes us to a level of looking at the city as a dark sky sort of compliant place, which, yeah.
It just means more capital and so forth.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Krog.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd love to say that my in-basket was filled with hundreds of letters and emails about this as an issue that was very important to the good voters of Nanaimo. But in fact, it tends to be filled with concerns and complaints around crime. And I suspect there are a number of people who are out there who would be saying, why are you talking about too much lighting in a city that, according to many, is undergoing too much crime, and light, in my experience, generally speaking, discourages criminal behavior. I wouldn't have 32, or, with great respect, Councillor Gesselbrock's proposed motion, which would lead to even more expense in this area. I'm trusting of staff of this to do what's reasonable over time, but this simply is not a priority. We have passed numerous motions today, approved a number of continuing projects and action plans for staff. How much of a burden can we continue to place on them, and then consider a further assessment, which is going to be costly and time-consuming? For what purpose? This strikes me, candidly, as a solution in search of a problem. And I'm just not prepared to support solutions in search of a problem. As I say, if there's public demand around an issue, then we need to respond. If there is a clear public need, then we need to respond. But responding to something that generates interest amongst a small and admittedly vocal portion of the population. With great respect, if you think you can't see the stars, then go for a walk on the beach at night and you'll be able to see the stars. But otherwise, I just can't see the value or importance of this relative to the issues that plague our city.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm in support of this because the dark skies thing is a fundamental part of the donut economic model, and you might not have emails in your inbox, but that's because birds can't send emails. And it's a wildlife thing, and it also is a big quality of life thing when streetlights are added, or we have a lot of car dealerships that are really bright. So I do think it would be worthwhile doing an assessment just to give us a sense of where we're at. And I think that this is a good way of moving in that direction. I think that staff can handle this assessment. So I trust this process. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Hemmens, and then we're going to decide whether we're dealing with the original action plan or a possible amendment. Councillor Hemmens. Yep, you're on.
Thank you, Chair. A question through you to staff. So this amendment is just adapting or broadening the assessment to include street lighting. Can I understand from staff what that will look like when we sit down to negotiate with Hydro? How will we use that to influence our decision making?
Chair, Councillor Hemmens asked a difficult question. I'm not sure what would be involved in conducting an assessment of a dark sky or light pollution from street lighting. At this point, I can say the street lighting that we do place is as dark sky compliant as we can make it. But this sort of implies that we would go to a higher degree and try and determine what sort of backscatter we're getting back up into the atmosphere. So I'm not sure at this point. I don't have a good answer for you. I apologize.
So then, if I may, my interpretation of that answer is that if we move this with that amendment, staff aren't sure what to do. This doesn't really change our direction. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hemmens. Just let me get up to date here. There we go. Yeah, this, as far as I'm concerned, relates to public safety, and as my recollection of our current policy reads, is that safety is actually the paramount consideration to be taken into account, which I agree with, and it also relates directly to our infrastructure in the city. So, Council, I think we need to decide at this point: do we move the amendment or support the amendment? And if we wish to do that, that's fine. Councillor Geselbrecht?
Thanks. Yeah, to just get it on the floor and debate it, I'd like to move the amendment that the priority action 32 of Green Nanaimo be replaced with complete a dark skies assessment of all city parks, facilities, and infrastructure, including street lighting, and develop an action plan to implement dark sky best practice. The city assessment will include analysis of light pollution and its sources, current lighting policies, and new policies for consideration, priority dark sky locations, recommendation for lighting fixtures, and implementation timelines.
And is there a seconder? Councillor Eastmere is seconding.
And to speak to it, this motion is different from the original one. It's including basically so the original one was city parks and facilities, and this one's including including infrastructure, including street lighting. And so infrastructure, I would think, if there's a pump station, to include, the lighting on that, and then the street lighting. I think having that part of the assessment, just even the BC Hydro example, when the choice between the different brightness of lights was done, there were lower choices that we could have done on roads, and it just wasn't in the algorithm the deciding factor, because we were simply looking at sort of the brightness and illumination, and we could have chosen a lighter color, a less light, like a less bright light. And so in this assessment, I think it's just looking at the parts of the city that we don't want to have, you know, extremely bright, where maybe in the sort of more rural areas at the fringe of the city where these dark sky principles are taken into account to make that decision. And I think that we're leaving out a huge chunk of lighting if we're not including our street lighting, because it makes up, you know, a large majority of it. And so I would, you know, vote to include that in this. Thank you.
Thank you. And before I go to Councillor Hemmons, I'll ask Council's indulgence that we already have had some discussion on this. I think we understand the amendment as it's in front of us, so I would ask that we keep our comments brief and move on. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Chair. Quick question through you to staff. When we negotiated our new lights with Hydro, were there options for less bright lights? And if we chose not to go that route, can I understand why, please?
Choose not to go that route, and what was the last part?
Why we would choose brighter lights? Were we using safety as a lens to set the brightness? Did we sit down with BC Hydro and negotiate which lights we were going to use and choose brighter ones than we could have?
Through the chair to Councillor Hemmons, no, actually it was the opposite. We had essentially a choice of two lights, and both we chose the warmer, lower wattage, lower luminance lights in residential areas, and the higher, brighter lights on, say, arterial or major roads, where it was where safety, traffic safety, pedestrian safety, and you know, where those were considerations and a conflict points around between, say, PEDs and like at intersections is the word I'm looking for. But so we were deliberate about trying to keep the lighting, because we've seen in other communities this sort of concern around blue lights and so on and so forth. So we've kept them warmer in the residential areas, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmuir.
Yeah, I really appreciate hearing that answer. So thank you, Councillor Hemmons, for asking that question. And yeah, I'd just like to maybe amend my earlier comment when I mentioned dealerships, because I realized that is not at all included in this motion. So yeah, that was not accurate. And you know, my comment about wildlife, like that is an aspect of the dark skies you know, movement, but of course I really appreciate what Councillor Thorpe said about it being a public safety thing as well, because there is a big push to increase lighting in certain neighborhoods that don't have lights on their sidewalks. I mean, they don't have sidewalks for in some cases as well, but they also don't have lights. But yeah, I still think the intent of this motion is a good one, and I hope that we would be able to figure out how to do a dark skies assessment. Again, just because Nanaimo got on board with the donut economy, and I think it would behooves us to, you know, address that aspect of the donut, because that's a big part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to call the question on the amendment as presented by Councillor Geselbrecht. All in favor? Councillor Eastmuir, Geselbrecht, and Manley, and those opposed on the amendment, Councillor Hemmons, Perino, Thorpe, and Mayor Krog. So the amendment fails. And
so Chair, now if you would like to just vote on the original motion, just so we can clean it up off the books, that would be great.
So we're back to the original action plan, which was number 32. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Ms. Gurry? And I'm not exactly sure, are we re-voting on the three options?
As we have done with the other ones that did not pass the majority to keep, we'll just re-vote whether to keep, remove, or have further discussion on it. So yes, Chair, as you had before.
All right, so I'll call for a show of hands on the three action alternatives for number 32. And the first one is to keep this as a priority. Hands, please. Councillors Eastmuir, Geselbrecht, Hemmons, and Manley. Those to remove, Councillors Thorpe, Perino, and Mayor Krog. And that adds up to 7, and I believe that's everybody who is here today.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
that action will remain as a priority.
Thank you.
Through the chair, is the committee okay to keep going on to the connected section? Seeing no opposition, we'll keep going. Okay.
Chair, yeah, that was, sorry, just through the chair, I was going to ask that question as well. It is 4:30 and we do have the one section left connected, but as I was mentioning at the start of the meeting today, and Ms. Bhopal Singh as well, we do have a GPC on Wednesday morning that we could add the connected section to the end of that agenda for you to tackle it then. So just to see how you feel with it being 4:30.
If
All
I
right.
might, if I might interject.
Sorry, Ms. Bhopal Singh.
Through the chair, I noticed that we received some other comments from councillors Brown and Gesselbart on governance, and I wasn't too sure where they were going to come in this conversation, but they seem to fit relating to the green. So that's around the mayor's leaders table. And then there's another one that Ms. Pan is pointing out to me about e-bikes, which could fit with connected, but I just thought I'd flag that before we move on.
Mr. Chair, I think we're going to deal with that under the prosperity section. This is not related, those would not be related to these subject matters today. So if council is going to deal with that section today, that's the time to deal with the mayor's leaders table. I think the question is, given 3.5 hours in, is this the time to continue into another major topic? That's the question to council. I suspect it isn't.
Yes, through the chair, Mr. Rudolph has kind of, that was what I was thinking as well. And the motions around the governance and the mayor's leaders table, I thought they fit with a prosperous Nanaimo in that section, that we could deal with them when that section came before you. And the other motions, if we don't get to connected Nanaimo today, we could deal with those motions related to that, or those amendments to those motions when we deal with that on Wednesday. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Gesselbrock, I'm just wondering if that would be amenable. There was a couple motions that were related to a connected Nanaimo, and there was the 2 additional information motions that we could deal with today before we adjourn, but I'm leaving it to the committee to decide whether we continue or continue on Wednesday.
I just have a question.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
Yeah, just in terms of like the governance one on the recommendations from the mayor's leader table on the donut economy awareness. I wasn't sure if that fit even in any of the OCP stuff, although it is related. There just wasn't. These are content specific, and this is more process around the implementation of the entire OCP, and so I think it fits somewhere in the OCP thing, but it doesn't matter when that one's moved. So if we want to move it later on in the discussion, I'm happy with that. The Wakeside Corridor one can be done with the connected Nanaimo, and then I guess the question is just with the additional information motions. You know, if there's energy to debate it here and just get it forward, I think this is a good time to do it because it's within Green Nanaimo, but it's just trying to figure out where to fit it in, and then also energy levels. So,
thanks, Councillor Gesselbrock. I can only speak for myself, but my energy level is rapidly waning. But
Chair,
it's
just
the will of the committee. I sense that there could be fulsome discussion and debate on connected Nanaimo issues, including the proposed additional motions, and my preference might be to tackle this fresh on Wednesday, when again I'll have the distinct pleasure of chairing. So that's my thought.
And Mr. Chair, just the thought too, and Ms. Bhopal Singh, Mr. Lindsay could help me with this. The ones that we haven't tackled today, the additional information reports, I'm wondering the thought of at the end when you wrap this up on the 20, like when you come back for the final kind of recommendations, would there not be an opportunity at that point as well to ask for additional reports and information, and or I'm just asking. If not, I think you should probably deal with the green ones today, because we have dealt with them and they're still in your mind, hopefully.
I see Councillor Manley with his hand up, and then Mayor Krog. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to suggest that we
wait with the Connected Nanaimo section until Wednesday. That's my preference. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mayor Krog.
Speaking entirely selfishly, Chair, as someone who's going to be out every evening, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm for calling it a close to today.
So, Councillor Gazelbrock.
Thanks. I don't want to, push tired colleagues. Just in terms of just having a time that we will address these. Like, I know they're also going forward as notice of motions. I think that, providing this direction, as timely as possible would be good. But when would we consider those additional information reports next?
Through the chair, and I'll also defer to Ms. Gurry, Wednesday we have a GPC in anticipation that we didn't get through all these topics, so you can either discuss it at the beginning before we start the connected piece. That might be, it's relatively fresh in your mind compared to, or as Ms. Gurry said, we can wait to the very end when we've got a summary of all the pieces. I think you may wish to consider it on Wednesday with a fresh mind, give yourself a day's sleep. Ms. Gurry, your thoughts?
Yes, through the chair, I would concur. I think Wednesday we could address those
Great. Well, we can do it maybe at the end on Wednesday because I'm not going to be here in the morning either.
Okay. All right. They'll get done.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And I think that would be my preference as well, to leave it till Wednesday and deal with those additional possible motions at the end of the session. So if that is the consensus, then I would be looking for a motion. Oh, do we have question period? I didn't notice anybody. No, Mr. Sims, thank you. So a motion to adjourn from Councillor Perino, seconded by Councillor Mayor Krog. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Good discussions today.